We have our flag. Very familiar flag, actually. I have made a note to correct the problem, so we have an actual flag. Trying to come to all bases, but totally missed that.
How you doing, Chairman?
Good over you?
That'll work. That'll work for today.
Doug said he was coming. Did everybody else respond?
Yeah.
This is
This is it, isn't it?
yeah, this plus stands is what we're expecting. Are we recording?
Just whenever you're ready to go, let Nick know and start the recording.
Okay, yeah.
Make sure we all speak up, because that's the only microphone we have.
Yeah, thank you, I was gonna mention that, yeah, exactly that. If you would, just use a louder voice to project. We do have a microphone for folks that are presenting to you, but in reality, it's the microphone on the camera that's going to pick up. We have had one meeting in this space, and like I said, if you just project a little bit, it picks it up just fine.
All right. So, let me call the January meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have an electronic flag tonight. Over here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, welcome to our first in-person meeting in more than a year and a half. We're coming to you not from the Township Hall, but from the Lincoln Reception Center in the Lux Funeral Home. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, given what's still going around, but this is where we are. This is a project that came through us a few years ago. So, we'll start with the roll call, please.
Squadrito,
Here.
Albrecht is excused. Buckley is excused. Darren,
Here.
LaBelle, Lapp, here. Shingles,
Here.
Thering.
Here.
Okay, we have 5 here. And here's Doug LaBelle.
Yeah, sorry.
Here.
I got mixed up. I went over to the Commission on Aging. Then realized I was in the wrong place.
So I'm doing roll call, so LaBelle.
Here.
All right.
We're slightly beyond aging, because So, thank you for that. So then the first item is approval of tonight's agenda. So your agenda has a variety of discussion items, and then 2 new business items and 2 returning business items under other business. Is there anything else that anyone is aware of that needs to be on tonight's agenda? If not, then I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as prepared.
Move to accept.
So, motion by Shingles, second by Lapp to approve tonight's agenda. Further discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have our agenda. Next item, we last met on December 21st, so we have the December 21st minutes. I'll point out, and some of you may have already caught it, and in fact, Tara caught it already as well. In the roll call, we missed Commissioner LaBelle, so we've added him back in.
Thank you.
Anything else on the December minutes that anyone noticed? Then I'd entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll make that motion with the LaBelle missing.
So, motion by Darren with the addition of LaBelle back into the attendance there a second?
Second.
Second by Terry. Further discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So, next item is correspondence, board reports, and presentations. So we have, first item is Commissioner Caring, updates from Board of Trustees.
I actually have nothing to report. Our last meeting was a record meeting of, I think, a whole 10 minutes. So it was more of the consent agenda, and that was really it. No new business items last week.
Any questions for Commissioner Caring? Okay, no, then thank you. Next item is Buckley updates from ZBA. Commissioner Buckley is not here tonight, so, and they wouldn't have met since that December meeting, right?
They did meet in January.
Oh, they did?
It took to finish the item that was on the consent.
Oh, that's right, okay. Anything you want to say about that?
I don't want to steal Ryan's thunder, but they did approve the variance that ultimately, that was before the December. They did take action in January through.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for that. So then, the main thing on this, in this section is going to be, we normally just have an update from Sidewalk and Pathway Committee through our representative on that committee, Commissioner Darren. But we have the members of the Sidewalk and Pathways Committee here with us tonight, so we have a little joint meeting here. So the agenda is Planning Commission discussion with the Sidewalk Committee members. So maybe what I'll do is, who's the chair of the Sidewalk Committee? Okay. So why don't you, I don't know, give us your thoughts on what's going on, if there's any issues you want to bring to our attention, you know, how you see the upcoming year shaping up.
So my name is Jeremy McDonald, for those I haven't met yet. I've been on this committee since it started several years ago, and our last meeting was, I believe, October. And we've kind of just taken a number of actions and back and forth. I think the biggest thing we have to find now is the ability to try to, finish off areas that need finishing, that could make, sense. We can always come back to places like bluegrass and things of that nature, but with a reasonable approach to, and what we did with the rules that we've tried to apply when somebody applies for a variance, or I think it's, what do we call it, a forgiveness or temporary
relief.
Yeah, relief, that sort of stuff. So, and our emphasis has been to do a better job of finishing money with budgeted money. And it seems like every year we say we have money in the budget, and we come through, and we never finish or use the money in the budget. So we've tried to identify some stronger areas that wouldn't be huge projects, but would actually, finish up budget type ideas. So that's kind of where we were with our last meeting and trying to how to go forward on that. One thing that came to us in the past is that pathway from Shepherd and getting through Mount Pleasant, and we've never come up with any sort of meaningful way to get it from A to B to C. So I think we've kind of stalled on that, but I think we'd just be happy if we could identify some priorities that would round out some areas that already have a lot of sidewalks in play, and that would involve either development by businesses or, more importantly, township budgets that could fill in those gaps that we already have money set aside for.
Thoughts from other members of the committee? Anybody want to chime in?
Well, I'd just like to support that. I mean, we see the money not being spent. I mean, they run into roadblocks. They're working hard at it, but when you can't get the commitment of the property owner, it kind of stalls them out until they can convince them to share the property. So we took our priorities for 2021 and added to them at the end of the year, but it is, I think, a good idea to, in order to keep that group working, moving forward on the sidewalks we want. Maybe not in the priority that we set forth. Maybe they're jumping down to the next one that maybe they can get the variance on the property and to allow the sidewalk to get put in. And I think, you know, we did that as a subcommittee, but I think that's a question for the planning commission. Is that really what the planning commission wants us, you know, to do, is to help with a longer vision of priority for that budget that they have set forth. Now the budget for 2022 plus what we had for 2021. So.
I think we talk about the township hall all the time, I think that's a microcosm of what you deal with out with the rest of these sidewalk areas. There's challenges to getting that, I mean, the first thing we ask is why does the township not have what they want everybody else to have? And there's been a desire, but there hasn't been a completion, right? So, but I think it's good because I think the township is aware of the obstacles that people face when they go to do these same type of projects and endeavors. So I think it helps understanding wise, you know, something like we ran into over at the merchandise outlet corner where, you know, yeah, you can set it there, but it's gotta connect to, I don't know what the wording is, Rodney, but, you know, it has to have what do they call it, another one at the other side or something like that.
Curb return at the other side.
Yeah, so, you know, I think those are all things that you think are simple, and you get into it, you figure out there's another layer yet that we weren't aware of, or, you know, whether it's just engineering stuff or size limitations or things of that nature that kind of hold not only township back, but residents and business owners.
Commissioners can also obviously chime in if you have questions or comments. We have, as I recall previous discussions over the years, there's something in the state enabling law about planning commissions dealing with capital improvements, right? I mean, we've never done that much with that. I think we've been busy with other things. But if sidewalk could be considered, and pathways could be considered capital improvements, am I right about that?
Yeah, there's actually two elements of the State Planning Act that apply. One is that the Planning Commission actually has original jurisdiction over a capital improvements plan. The Board of Trustees can take back that authority, and Union Township they have. That formal process of capital improvements program development is handled outside of the Planning Commission. But there's a second section in the Planning Act that applies, and that is you have the ability to make recommendations on public improvement projects. Both to make recommendations on public improvements that ought to be made, or priorities like the sidewalks. This is really why the Sidewalk Committee is a committee that recommends to the Planning Commission. But also you have the ability to make recommendations on projects, public improvement projects that the township is proceeding with. I'm not talking about like replacing the existing water line or sewer line, but extending our water service district, extending our sewer service district. That would need to come to you for your recommendation. It's just a recommending body on that. Ultimately, the Board of Trustees has their own final choice to make. But the State Planning Act gives you the ability to review a situation like expanding water or sewer, like extending a sidewalk, sidewalks in areas or pathways in areas where they aren't right now. And to look at it from a planning perspective, a long-term, is this right for the community perspective, and to make your recommendation.
Commissioner Darren referenced a 2021 budget and now 2022. Randy, do you know what the current allocation is?
Right offhand, I would be pulling a number a bit out of the air, but there are at least a couple of $100,000 budgeted for sidewalk projects. These have carried over because they were not able to be completed, and the Sidewalk Committee has made recommendations. Those have been added in. So I think it actually may be over $300,000 in total between the general fund and the East and West DDA district funds. Just depends where the project is, as to where the money is allocated.
I think Commissioner Houck has a figure.
Well, it was over 300,000.
Yeah.
I think it was like 360.
when you add everything together.
I think you may be right.
Well, that's our concern is a lot of you have probably been part of budgets where if you don't spend the money in that budget, pretty soon that line's not there anymore. Not saying one way or another, but Stan, I know you've probably seen some of these. And that's what we say. We need to stop talking about and use the money and make these things reality. This is at least my 4th or 5th year doing this discussion and nothing's been done. And that's frustrating because they come to us like how to get sidewalks, pathways, things of that nature. And, you know, we want businesses to go do it and we're not doing what, you know, the same end result that we could be doing.
Well, speaking for myself, I do feel like our plates are usually pretty full and we have pretty long agendas most months. Not every month, but most months. So I think I would welcome a list, like if you guys have a list in mind of you know, top priority projects or what have you, both with respect to where things should be, but also with respect to things that, you know, don't have a lot of weird impediments like the getting the easements and so on. I would welcome that, and I think we would take it up, and we would be happy to make recommendations to the board along those lines.
I think the list is already there, but I think we've tried to take it in years. Okay, work on these 5 in 2021. And we didn't really, and maybe that's where we could help. We didn't say, if you hit your head for 2 weeks and it doesn't feel like that property owner is gonna give you the easement, move to the next one online. And you keep going and you keep going into 2022, because the list is there. It's already prioritized, we've already looked at it. But I think it's the go-ahead to do that. Now, it's not the grand plan, but as we're saying, maybe we can get some actual sidewalks in. Spend some of that money and make some progress, and maybe putting in more sidewalk, filling in some of the gaps that we have, and people start, and we have some success stories, maybe it'll be easier to sell the whole idea to the people who are hesitant to give the property over. Just a thought.
Another topic we've come across that's a stumbling block, and I come back to bluegrass because that's the easiest one of the most examples. But it's personal opinion that there's a farm stretch right there, right? And from everything we've talked about, that person doesn't want to do it because the way we understand it, even if we paid for a sidewalk or paid most of the sidewalk, then he's got to maintain it. And it's ours, like, if it's important enough to have in there, I think we need to find money to pay for clearing it. Because if a guy owns a farmland, he's not going to come and shovel off when it snows 3 or 4 inches. It's just not realistic to ask that person, or reasonable to ask that person to hire someone to do something like that. So you have to think outside about and do something you haven't done before. So you got 2 choices. Either don't get it done, or do something we haven't done in budget to be able to get it done. And that's an important stretch because that's probably the only area I ever see people walking consistently. And that's a huge area getting people to CMU and whatnot. But we have that area and we haven't been successfully approached to this point. And I understand it costs money to do those kinds of things, but I always feel like if you had an accident and you went back and said, geez, what if we had just done this? I think everybody would have done it, knowing you could have avoided an accident that ultimately, you know, took a life or something along those lines.
Commissioner Watt?
Rodney, how many projects are actually ready to go? Are any actually ready to go in the next season?
I guess I'll say a couple of things. First of all, we've had sidewalks constructed by development projects, and we have worked very hard, and you've seen some of these projects come through. Not all of them. Some have been administrative site plan approvals, but we've gotten some pretty good chunks of sidewalk done. Menards, I think, is our biggest one. They wanted to do a small addition in their outdoor area on the north side of their building. They needed an administrative site plan approval, and we let them know they had to put the sidewalk in along Bluegrass Road from Aldi's eastward to their property line, which I don't remember how many hundreds of feet that is, but it's quite a number of 100 feet. they did it. It took a little discussion, helping them understand that they didn't have an option not to. They did it, and so that large chunk of sidewalk was put in. We've had some other smaller ones put in, as we have some others coming. The construction on the Dunkin' Donuts Marathon Gas Station project, Bloomfield and Isabella is starting now, just getting started, but they have, again, a number of 100 feet of sidewalk. So it's actually a fairly long piece of property that they'll be putting in. So some of those projects have been done. The projects that are in the township budget have been really tied up with easements. And I had this conversation with the EDA board. That's the board that oversees our downtown development authority districts, and a fair chunk of the sidewalk projects are within their jurisdiction. And they put up a good chunk of the change in their budgets for those projects. The big challenge is easements. I worked for many years as a consultant before coming to the township. I've worked with probably 7 or 8 different county road commissions in my time, and I've never run into one that is so averse to buying right of way as the Isabella County Road Commission. Many projects like Bluegrass Road, Broomfield Road, you have 5-lane roads that are within a 66-foot wide right of way. They have literally gone curb to edge of the right of way. There's a few inches or feet beyond the curb that's part of the right of way. That means everything else, the streetlights, the utility, water and sewer lines right through there, telephone lines, sidewalks, anything else that wants to be running along that road has to get its own easement. Well, that's just unheard of in most places. In most places, the county owns a 120-foot wide right of way on their major primary roads. And so there's plenty of room to have a 5-lane road and margin, and then have sidewalks and utilities and all that running in that right of way. So without that right of way, you have to negotiate with every single property owner. And as was mentioned by Jeremy, it's a real challenge. They don't want to do it because they know they have to maintain it. And I appreciate the priority of having the township maintain it. And the EDA board does that in the East EDA district. We have a contract with Doug Small Engine Repair to plow the snow on the sidewalks along Pickard Road. At this point, it doesn't go beyond that. We could do it in the West EDA district as well. It probably will when we have more sidewalks there. Right now, one of the other projects we had was the road commission. They also put in a number of 100 feet of sidewalk in front of their property. They are maintaining it. We don't have to. But when we do the remaining work there, we will probably end up having to maintain it, extend that contract, because there's a lot of small businesses along there that would otherwise have to maintain it. So it is a real challenge. I appreciate that Commissioner Darren's comments about looking at identifying successes and looking at doing a better job of trying to help people see the value of them. And I made note of that, and we're going to look at shifting our approach. We've had an approach of, we'd like to do this, here's the easement, please sign it, return it. Just a very basic approach, and I think maybe perhaps a more creative approach will help. In the end, the township can use the eminent domain process, where we would go to court and essentially have a court order to granting us the easement. It is a public purpose, absolutely valid. And so under the Constitution, that is an option, but it is also a legal process, and it can be a very extended and very expensive one. So it is, and a very contentious one. So we're going to burn a lot of bridges using it. There are some places where we may have to. There's a property on East Bluegrass Road, a short stretch, 100 feet or something, in front of a small older apartment building. That there's no sidewalk there. There's sidewalks on both sides. People walk it all the time. There's a well-worn path through there. The owner has absolutely zero interest in it. And so we probably will end up having to do that if we're going to get that one. But anyway, but even with the challenges with our public projects, we have had great success with some private developments. And we'll continue to do that. We prioritize that. Peter can tell you many stories of emphasizing that over and over again. You need to put in sidewalk, having the separate sidewalk ordinances outside of the zoning ordinance has actually been very helpful, because the first question always is, well, can I get a variance? And the answer to that is no. You could go to the planning commission and ask for temporary relief, but here's our policy on that, and if you fit within that, then feel free. If you don't, then you're probably not going to get that relief. And so it's proved to be a very good approach with our sidewalk ordinance. But like I said, the public side has been more of a challenge.
But therein lies our problem, right? So, the question started with what projects do we have identified to pay for? And no offense, but we don't have any, we didn't name any, right? So the one that you're referencing on Bluegrass, we talked before, and the offers to the person was 50%, and they maintain. So that's what I'm saying, we need to sweeten the pot, because it hasn't been getting done.
Well, in our budget, the approach we've taken since I've been here, and I'm aware of in the past it was a 50% approach. The reason, as I understand it, for that approach where they would fund 50% of the township and pay the other 50%, is both so that the property would have skin in the game, but also essentially developers are being required to pay 100%. And so trying to avoid that inequity or even appearance of inequity. We found that approach didn't work very well, as I understand it. As I said, that was before I started. And so with the work we've been doing, it has been, the township is going to do this. We need you provide easement, but the township will build this. And the funding has been to cover 100%. So that's just adjustment we've already made. We may need to make more adjustments, but we've kind of dropped the 50% approach. Just as not a sustainable way to get this done.
Yeah, and eminent domain has not been our recommendation or anything, just to make that clear. That's not been our, last resort or nothing. We've never gone down that road. I understand the need and the possibility, but just to separate those two things, that's not what we have concluded at any point.
If you'd like, I can, I don't have the list in front of me, but I can give you a list, I suspect fairly complete, of the projects that are budgeted. On Bluegrass, on the south side of Bluegrass, it's budgeted to go basically east of the Members First Credit Union, right there at Encore Boulevard. They have a sidewalk in front of their building, so east of them, along the front of Walmart, there's some lots there that are not owned by Walmart, but you can see Walmart down the hill. So east of the Members First Credit Union on the south side of the road, all the way to Mission Street. On the north side, basically filling the gaps. We have a number of small gaps near Mission within the township, and then at the east end, closer to Hunter's Ale House, we have a longer gap of a piece of undeveloped property that we were looking at go ahead and complete it, because if we completed those pieces, then we'd have a stretch along the whole north side. On Broomfield Road, similar, small gaps, primarily, I think actually all the gaps are on the south side of the road, and it's just small gaps to go, to finish the sidewalk up to just beyond Sweeney Road, if I recall. We of course have that mixed-use project that you approved in 2020, early 2021. That hasn't been built yet. They're still planning on it. They've had some financing challenges, but they're still working on it. And that would fill in part of that gap. On South Lincoln Road, right here, we have a project to connect the sidewalk in front of this property, from the funeral home, up to the Township Hall, and ultimately to connect it into McDonald Park. The McDonald Park portion is not funded yet, but it's an item that has been identified by the committee. It's also been identified by our parks folks as a priority. That project would also connect to a project on the north side of Pickard Road that will go from Lincoln eastward to the sidewalk that is just to the west, I don't remember the business there, but we have a new bank that went in, just to the west of that, is where the sidewalk ends. So that would connect the sidewalk all the way through from the city up to the township hall. Then the last stretch that I think is on our public list is Rebus Road, within the West EDA district. And that would be both sides of Rebus Road from Bradley Street, which is the city boundary, west to South Lincoln Road. And as I said, connect both sides. The road commission has done a big chunk of that on the north side, and the project would finish the rest. We have been blessed, the state highway department has done a little bit of work for us in terms of they regraded some things to eliminate some drainage ditches on part of it. Yeah, that was, we let them know what we wanted to do, and they changed their plans actually to set it up so it would be great for sidewalks. Those are the public projects. We do, out right there at Lincoln and Rebus, we do have a private project, that is Chuck McGurk and his property on the southwest side of that intersection, where the delis, dozers, the delicatessen there. He has a commitment based on a previous site plan approval, and ultimately, I think, is that a court action?
It was court mandated.
Yeah, court mandated. He has to complete the sidewalks in front of dozers, basically going west side of Lincoln south, south side of Rebus west. The chunks of that sidewalk is not in yet. Basically, go dozers in both directions outward, and he committed to completing that in 2022. So he'll be doing that this year. And we'll be working with him to help him make sure that gets done. So there's some projects out there, public and private. The Rebus projects has probably the highest possibility of success. Even though that's a state highway, that section still has some right-of-way issues. And so we still have, I think, at least 7 or 8 properties that we were going to need to get easements from. We have not yet any of it.
I think it would be helpful at some point, doesn't have to be immediately, but I think it would be so helpful for us to have that list.
Okay.
I assume you keep one somewhere, and so, whether it's a spreadsheet or whatever, but, property status, that type of thing. Maybe what year it was budgeted in or what have you.
I know one area we've talked about too before is from Lincoln, Broadway coming through to Lincoln, and I've asked Rodney, we've talked about this discussion before, but I live in Cornerstone, there's roughly 75 homes in there, and we have kids, and they want to get out, but to get out anywhere, if they want to go downtown, they gotta run the gauntlet on Pickard for a couple hundred yards, and then get it into the back neighborhoods. Now, I know that that project would be a collaboration between city and township because of where it's at, but I think it's a worthy thing. It'd be a, nicer way to get from Lincoln into town, and a lot of the infrastructure is already there, if I understand, but I just don't know that any of those conversations have even started to take place or anything along those lines.
I can share a little bit about that. Basically, the idea is kind of you're talking about extending Broadway across. And, yeah. So in Broadway coming out of downtown, gets to Bradley and stops. There's I think a driveway that goes on beyond it, but it's not a road through there. So between Bradley Street and Lincoln, that Broadway really ought to exist. It's a perfect corridor. For the Cornerstone Estates in the south end of their project, there's a tiny bit of the right-of-way that was made as part of that project. You drive it all the way to the back, there's a little turnaround area, that's Broadway, that little piece. But the rest of the road does not exist. Part of it, as was mentioned, is in the city, part of it's in the township. Part of it is the Victory Church property, just down the street here. There's no right-of-way. Actually, where the road would go is kind of a low point, so it's a bit challenging from a topographic perspective. So I have had a conversation with the city official on that. This is not anything other than hey, we've been talking about this. Have you been talking about it? I was talking about the city planning, my counterpart. And we meet regularly, and we just chat about the city township things we might be able to work on. We worked together on a boundary issue in 2020 during the worst of COVID to try to solve a boundary problem that the Census Bureau found. We were able to solve it, which was great. But it definitely took collaboration to do it. So this has been on our list, and he did mention that it's on his list as well, but obviously no funding, that's a much longer term project. The best thing would be for a developer to come in and really finish this neighborhood, and perhaps add to it, because then they would build that, they would enjoy it, obviously enjoy the benefits of it, and have the access, and we could incorporate these things into it. Because it certainly would be excellent if there was both a road connection along that stretch, but also a sidewalk connection through, so people could get downtown and get out. But it would add a great deal of value. But it would be a very expensive project. And it's not in an EDA district. It's something that would, from the township's perspective, and frankly from the city perspective, would be general fund dollars. And those are fairly precious. There is some, this federal money, the American Rescue Plan Act money, some money's coming to cities, some is coming to the township, some is coming to the county. But as with any kind of found money type thing, there are quickly growing number of potential projects for it. So even that amount that's coming to the township wouldn't fund a road project of the scale that this would be. So it's something that it would take a lot more work and more collaboration. We have started the conversation, we'll continue it, and certainly encourage opportunities to talk to the city commission, talk to the township board of trustees, and mention that. And I know, I think the sidewalk committee had it on the list the last time, and I would encourage that to continue to be on the list of recommendations, because that's really how things get from the bottom of the list. You're talking about capital improvements plan. The capital improvements program is typically a 6-year process. So you have year 1, year 2, year 1 is current year, and year 6 is the bottom. And year 6 always ends up coming year 1 eventually. And so even if a project is seen as a long-term or even almost a pie in the sky, we don't know how we fund that kind of thing, over time, with thought and with consideration, it can find its way into something that has a budget.
Rodney, could you also talk about the other township city collaboration at Harris Street that's going to connect Pickard up to Mission Park there?
Would you like, if you'd like to, I can fill in if you'd like to go ahead and share it, because it's a great project. If you'd like.
Well, I wasn't exactly clear about the city, when the city was going to begin their portion of that.
Okay. Well, Phil, I appreciate, I'm happy to share. So this is, of course, the city has the Mission Creek Park. This is where the Hannah's Mark Park is, on North Harris Street. The township is Crawford Road, and the city is North Harris Street. This north of Mr. Coyne's property. And the city has plans to extend a sidewalk or pathway connection from Pickard Road, where the sidewalk ends right now, north to the park. And the township is collaborating on that, and we have the township has agreed to work with the city on that project. And in fact, we're having conversations about can we extend it further north and get the sidewalk or pathway all the way up to River Road. We have a residential neighborhood up at River that a lot of folks there are very interested in having that. They've come and talked to the Sidewalk Committee in the past. I think shared some information with them, asking for that. So that's another city township collaboration. I in fact had a conversation with the city parks director just this morning on that topic, and so we're working on some potential funding requests for it.
I did have one more thing. We kind of tap danced around it, but I think we need to give the group working on these easements a few more tools. And I think that maintenance of the sidewalks, we cut a lot of grass in this township. We find funding for that. I think we should ask the board to consider maybe a priority sidewalk, maybe a ring sidewalk, high traffic sidewalk, whatever, but to consider, funding of cleaning of sidewalks or maintenance of I don't know how they wanna word it, for safety. But if we had that in the tool pouch of these people that are trying to get the easements, we might get a lot more work done. But I think it needs to be considered. Obviously, it's a priority to keep baseball parks, you know, grass cut for safety reasons, I'm sure. But we should also treat the sidewalks in a similar fashion, I think. If we want, obviously, it's a priority for the township. If we want them, we should consider that. So I'd like to maybe ask Commissioner Thering to take that back and.
Would you say that one more, just the brief
Well-
part, I just wanna make sure I got it down correctly.
The justification is we spent a lot of money on cutting grass.
Yep.
And we put a lot of resources to that, money and people. I think, with the sidewalks that we're trying to prioritize for the township, we should maybe look to put some resources at that, whether it's a body and equipment, or whether we hire the service done. And put a priority on, what sidewalks they would consider maintaining, so.
This wouldn't be for all of them, this would just be.
I'm not
a-
sure that is necessary. I mean, there's sidewalks that aren't walked on every week.
Right.
So there would definitely be a priority list. I believe.
Thank you.
One other thing I wanted to come back to, you mentioned the pathway running up from Shepherd. Were you talking about the one on South Mission?
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever, so when I go down to Shepherd, I often take that route, so I'm back and forth on that. When that gets up into the township, what happens to it? What is, because there was a lot of talk about running it through the CMU, like the research park, and where should it go through Mount Pleasant? All that's still up in the air, is that right?
So when it gets to Deerfield, there where the apartments are in the township, it turns down Deerfield,
Okay.
it goes down to Crawford, and then it goes up north on Crawford to the entrance into the research park.
Oh.
And then it goes through the research park and into campus. And then through, the route obviously from there is city streets and sidewalks.
So it goes all the way to Crawford?
There is a CMU pathway somewhere in there that is not, one wanders around a little bit, but the bike path, the main bike path format goes down Deerfield and up Crawford, and then through the research park. There is, we met, Mark Stuhlgart and I met earlier this year with CMU planners. CMU has been working on a campus master plan, and one of the projects that they have on their list related to the south end of campus. Most of their projects on campus were central, more to the north, but they do intend on constructing a connector from that Research Park Drive. I can't recall exactly where, but basically about halfway along that stretch, about halfway along Deerfield. Basically a connector that would go from the Research Park Drive straight across their vacant land there to Deerfield and have a mid-block crossing there. So it could be a little bit shortcut for that pathway. And also it would be a better pathway for the students that live in those apartments at the south side of Deerfield to get to campus, a little more direct.
What about, to go back to Broadway, is there a possibility of having on that stretch, if no one is willing or able to build a road, to build a pathway? That would be, you know, it might even be a temporary thing until somebody eventually does decide to make it a road.
Yeah, there certainly is. The same challenges apply. Getting the easements and getting the rights to do it. But yes, it could be potentially done as a pathway. You know, the benefit, the challenge you have when you build a pathway through otherwise essentially vacant land is you can create a circumstance where you create places for people to behave badly. You don't want to create a space that is isolated, because frankly people won't use it, they won't feel safe. So whatever we would design, this was actually, this was a discussion item related to CMU plan. They have some pathways, but they go through the woods, and so nobody uses them, because it's really pretty unsafe for folks at night or other times. It certainly doesn't feel safe, because anybody can be hiding behind the tree and drag you off from the trees. Where I grew up downstate in the area of Plymouth and Livonia, there's a pathway that runs along I-275. It's one of the first bike paths that was created along a major route like that. Unfortunately, there was about 2 or 3 places where it was pretty isolated, and it became a real problem. There was a lot of attacks out there, and they had to go in. The way they solved it eventually was cut all the trees down. It went through the woodlands. It was really pretty, but they buzzed all the trees down because that was a place where things were happening that shouldn't. So along that Broadway, you have some potential of the same kind of thing if we don't set it up right. If you have the road, at least you have more eyes on it, because people will be passing through on the road as well.
Other questions and comments? This has been a good discussion. I don't want to cut it short if anyone has, but we do have other agenda items.
I'll have no comment.
Bill?
We've got more money budgeted for sidewalks in our budget this year than we do for roads. Roads bring business in, sidewalks don't. We need sidewalks, but we need roads too. And we have more money budgeted this year for sidewalks than we do roads. So there's a comment on.
I would challenge that statement that sidewalks don't bring business. I think the Strong Towns organization has a lot of evidence that sidewalks encourage and increase business where they're put in.
Okay, that's my comment.
Other comments from commissioners or members of the Sidewalks and Pathways Committee? Well, we thank you all for coming out this evening to our new home, temporary. At some point, I assume we'll go back to the Township Hall, but good to see you all, good to have the discussion, and so we'll hope to continue to make some progress. Thank you. So, let's see, next item is public comment. So, if anyone would like to address the Planning Commission on any item that's not on tonight's agenda, we ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes, limit your comments to 3 minutes. Public comment on items not on tonight's agenda is open at 7:47.
Okay, Bill Hub, 1304 East Baseline. I just wanted to let you guys know, next Wednesday night, we're going to be looking at new members for your board. I want to thank everybody for everything they've done, but I also expect you to do your due diligence. We've got a former member of your board that called me a couple of months ago, pretty upset after your November meeting. Told me that he's sick of coming to these meetings, people opening their board packets the night of the meeting. So what have you done? Have you gone out, looked at looked at the sites? Have you asked questions? It's ridiculous to put people on these boards that aren't going to do their due diligence. I know it might look good on a resume that I'm on this board, but I mean your board, when you guys put it on your resumes, but my God, I think it's ridiculous, and I've seen it. I've watched meetings where I've seen people open their board packets the night they got to the meeting. So what have you done? Have you gone out to the site? How many of you looked at the blueprints? You know, we talked about sidewalks. I realize we need sidewalks. We need business too. We've discouraged businesses from building here because of some of the restrictions we have. There's a business not too far from here. They wanted to expand. They wound up just putting on a little porch. And the reason they did is they had put, the sidewalk was going to cost them more than their addition. They were going to add people to their staff. Did they add people to their staff? No, because they can't build on. If they add people to their staff, there's a possibility that they could buy a house in our township. This, I encourage you guys to do your jobs, and I'm gonna be real picky on who I vote to put on this board. Thank you.
Other public comments? Okay, well, we thank the public for their comments, and we'll go ahead and close that back up. So we're ready to move on to our new business item. And so the first one is a rezoning request, PREZ 21-03, for a proposed planned unit development to rezone to the PUD zone for Prestige Center Assisted Living Facility expansion. And so it's nicely broken down here in terms of things. So we're going to have first an introduction from Township staff, then we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll have a question and answer, and then we'll proceed from there.
Well, thank you. You have before you the plans for Prestige. This is the first planned unit development project under our new ordinance. It's the first planned unit development project in a very long time in the country. Our new ordinance, we did update the PUD section to add flexibility to encourage exactly this kind of a project that doesn't fit perfectly into any of the existing zoning districts, but nonetheless could be a good fit for development in the community. So to give you and ultimately the Board of Trustees a vehicle to consider a creative project, or it's something that, as I said, it's a little different, mixed use or other elements that may not fit neatly into any particular zoning district. This is a redevelopment of an existing site, a long operating assisted living facility dates back to the 1980s. What you have, the plan you have before you, is what I emphasize, is not a site plan. Although it uses the word site plan in a couple of places, it's not a site plan. It is what the ordinance calls a PUD concept plan. And it really serves only three so functions. One of them is to define the types of land uses that are going to be on the site. And the second element is to show the general layout of those land uses and development activity. And the third element is to note any deviations, what the ordinance calls limited deviations, from the standard ordinance requirements that would apply, like parking and signage or lighting or height or those kinds of things. Those limited deviations, you can think of them like a variance, that they allow the project to have a different standard than the ordinance that would otherwise apply. In this case, the plans don't really lay those out. As we note in our report, they don't lay out those deviations, so you don't have them in the document before you. The plans you have before you are deficient in a number of ways. Our report is fairly long. You can see it's kind of a checklist of things they did, checked off, a number of things they didn't do or that they need to make adjustments to, that we had check boxes there. But even though the plans are not fully complete, we wanted to bring this before you, both so you can have kind of a first look, and also so you could provide the applicant, hear from the applicant, provide any direction to the applicant that you thought might be appropriate, or things for the applicant to consider as they're updating the plans. They're certainly going to use our checklist to kind of take care of the requirements. But anything else you may think of or be concerned about, this is a great time to let the applicant know. Typically, the first step would be a planning commission public hearing, because it is a rezoning process. In this case, the end result, let's say this project goes before the Board of Trustees and is approved. The PUD concept plan becomes the zoning of the property. If the zoning district will be the PUD district. And the plan, that concept plan you have before you, the updated version of it, would actually be the zoning of the property. So all future use, all future development would have to be consistent with that plan. And so that's why, first of all, a report is long, and the requirements of the PUD section are fairly long, is because there's a lot of detail that needs to be on that kind of a document from a land use perspective. So for tonight, as I said, the goal is to essentially introduce it, and have the opportunity for the applicant to kind of make a presentation to you, and for you to ask questions, and offer whatever direction, or comments, or concerns, or suggestions you may have, that they can then incorporate into an updated concept plan, that the intention would be coming back before you in future meetings. With that, I'm happy to answer questions as we go along.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Rodney before we hear from the applicant? Okay, then I'd like to invite the applicants to come forward and really talk to us, anything you'd like to say. The floor will be yours.
See if I can do this without banging the computer against the microphone and everything else. I understand we don't have the ability to put anything up, so I'm going to do the tell portion of the show and tell, I think. But I would like to use this sort of thing to keep myself on track. I'm Kevin Willis with MCAP Advisors. We are the new owners of the Prestige Center Senior Living Complex. We have recently purchased, I believe it was 8 different facilities across the state of Michigan, and are very happy to be here, happy to be invested in Michigan. We are happy to be working with you all, and we've got a long history of doing this. So MCAP has been in this business for approximately 20 years. We have a successful track record of acquiring senior living facilities that typically, quite honestly, are undersized or underdeveloped, undercapitalized. They need some infusion of capital. They need CapEx improvements. They need upgrades. They need to be right-sized to make them sustainable. Or also to, it's classic economy of scope and scale to add scope. So we are strong believers in giving folks the ability to age in place. And so we have often bought failing independent living properties and added assisted living and memory care so that people could age in place. We've bought assisted living that didn't have memory care and introduced memory care to allow people to age in place. So that's sort of the strategy that our business has lived by for 20 plus years. And this is a very similar situation. And I think that the PUD process really lends itself to expanding that aging in place concept here. You have a community here that's largely a memory care community that our building, by the way, we call them communities. We tend to try and shy away from the word facility. So when I say community, I'm referring to the building, but largely a memory care community could benefit by being freshened up, expanded, and made more marketable as a market rate assisted living building, so that it really presents and welcomes the residents in. The thought with the additional parcel there and the concept of the independent living is to allow yet another step of that aging in place process, to allow seniors to move in when they're more independent and to be able to then age in place on the campus in their hometown or in their adult daughter, adult son's town, right there in one place. So we've done this for many years, often by going from lower acuity and adding higher acuity services, and this one is almost the same but in the reverse, taking a high acuity situation and maybe adding some lower acuity care. So I think it really does fit with our philosophy, and again, it's something that we've done for many years. Our goals as a whole are improving communities and improving the lives of seniors, their families, our staff, our residents, and the community as a whole. And we do that with enriched physical, investment in physical plan, enriched programming, a lot of things that we like to bring to the table. Again, this really sort of fits our mold. We are, as I said, a new owner, but the manager of the property who takes care of the residents day to day has been retained, so we have the same management, the same people, the same folks there taking care of Mom today that were taking care of Mom a year or two ago. We don't look to turn people's lives upside down and take their beloved caregiver away from them. That is not our model. We are simply the guys who are investing the money into the property. We look forward to continuing that relationship. We do believe there's unmet demand here. I think there's unmet demand in the market. I think as you guys work through your development plans, you're seeing it, you're prepping for it, you're setting the stage for it, and you know, we want to be a part of that as well. So it's our goal to provide good, safe, secure care here in your community. And as I said, a lot of times the undersized buildings have a very difficult time being sustainable. So being able to expand the building helps us drive affordability and sustain the business. That's kind of an overview of our philosophy. I don't know, Mr. Danny, if you, how much folks have seen from a plan perspective. Do they have?
They've had the plans for
Okay, so they have you have the full plan package. You should be able to see there's a sort of an overall site plan that's prior to a phasing plan.
Do you have a page number that you?
I apologize, Ian, do you know that I've got sort of a dumbed down presentation.
Just so we can follow along.
I know, I apologize.
You're good.
Well, Andy,
I have it open on there, so,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, you're fine. I just want to make sure I'm
I'm
following.
just gonna get
along.
real close here.
You're okay.
Page 5 of the D size sheets.
Thank you.
Says phase 1 and 2 plan on the bottom right.
And I apologize,
Thanks.
I'll do this to you a couple more
No,
times.
you're good.
But that gives you a big overview of the plan, and through what you'll see in a moment is phase 1 and phase 2. Essentially what we are looking to do is expand out the front of the existing building, I'm referencing the front, not from the road, but from the parking lot entrance side. And then to the north with what would be a new assisted living building. So new product, larger common space, larger units, much more open, airy, welcoming, more, I think a little more deliberate use of the office space, pushing dining towards the front. Just really improving the feel of the community and the marketability to an assisted living population. At the same time, though, not to forget our memory care residents, the focus in the existing building would be to go back into the memory care building and to provide new finishes, new common space, new furniture, and also to add some additions that would create private bathrooms where there otherwise aren't in some of these rooms, and quite frankly, there are a couple rooms with no bathrooms. And that's just something that does not fit in our philosophy. So some of this expansion takes those things into account as well. That's the big picture overview to that building. And then the addition sort of pushes out in the parking lot, so the parking lot pushes out in front of that. And then we have this, we have this large parcel that if we can make this plan work with you guys, we're gonna merge the parcels, and it sets itself up beautifully for an independent living building. We've run several of those. They meld very nicely. It creates, again, a great flow. You can have independent seniors who are in an independent setting, but they have the availability of services. There's staff there. They're not necessarily paying for something they don't need, but if they need it, it's across the street. There's meal availability, housekeeping, a lot of those things. So that's kind of looking forward to the second phase piece of this. Several other improvements that we're looking to make, a little bit more deliberate entrance point to the community, obvious entry, lobby, sense of arrival, covered portico-share that protects people from the weather as they're coming in. Those are all things that we're looking to accomplish with the new. There's a couple byproducts here that I think are nice and probably attractive from a planning perspective too. The facade, as you look at it, I was talking about speaking to the front from the parking lot perspective, but if you think from the road perspective, this thing's sort of a long, rambling stretch of uniformity there. And one of the things that we are going to accomplish, more for function than form, but the form comes out of it, is with the bathroom additions that we are looking to do on the building. We're going to create some gable roofs that will break up that facade along the road frontage, and I think will greatly benefit the appearance of that building from the road. Yeah, I think I've kind of run through from a presentation and introduction perspective what my thoughts here, and sorry I didn't open with it, but I welcome Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for hearing from us, and also Mr. Nate and Mr. Galahad for working with us on this. We've done several of these, as I mentioned. We just purchased 8 buildings in the state, and we have successfully worked through 3 rezoning actions in other localities. We're actually 4, like that. So this will be number 5, hopefully. And we have worked through some PUD revisions before in other localities, so we're well aware. I appreciate the time these guys put in with the review, though. I understand there's a few things where we've fallen short here. We need to get some details worked out. We look forward to working with staff to get that done. I would leave myself open to questions, comments, thoughts.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Should I assume that the phase 2 portion, what you call the independent living building, more or less the character of an apartment building?
Typically, I guess I can speak from sort of our experience and our style of programming. It would be apartment living plus a little bit. So we have, to illustrate that a little, we have taken over what were senior apartments, where they were simply apartments with an age restriction. And when we did that, we made the sprinkler systems and the building systems more robust, safer buildings, different egress plans, life safety type things. But we also added a commercial kitchen, a large congregate dining room, fitness center. Some of those things are probably sort of normal expectations in our crazy amenitized apartment world these days. But that's sort of the difference. I mean, we have a fitness center that's geared specifically for seniors, where there's pneumatically operated weight equipment. Little things like that differentiate it. We typically, in our independent living, even though it's not a requirement of the state, it's not a regulatory thing, we typically offer a nurse call system so that they have the ability to reach out to a caregiver or for help if something happens. We typically offer a check-in system where we're wanting the resident to pull a cord, push a button, do something every morning so that we know that they're up, moving, healthy, happy. Again, not a regulatory thing, but something that we feel is important. So those are the little things that probably differentiate it from purely like an age-restricted apartment product.
And does this age in place kind of structure, if this were to come to fruition, does it work in such a way that if a person is in the independent living, but they're fading and they become, they ultimately require greater care, that they could then move to the other building?
That is absolutely what we would like to work with the family to do. I will differentiate from what most people would call a CCRC or continuing care retirement community, which if you guys have ever seen those, it's the one where you strip a $500,000 check to get in the door, and then you pay monthly fees and they guarantee you life care forever. It's a pretty popular model in a lot of places. Most states define that as an insurance business because it is an actuarial business. I mean, people are writing $500,000, $750,000 checks and you're promising them life care. That is not what we do. We are a private pay, monthly pay company. So you move in, you sign a lease, it's basically a monthly lease. You pay your room, care, board, services. Choose to move out, you choose to move out. When your needs become such that we can't safely take care of you, we are strongly going to encourage your family member to move you to the place where we can. So if they were in independent living, and we were concerned about their health, safety, welfare, we're going to meet with the family and say, Mom really needs to move across the parking lot. So that's more how we would look at it. It is not a life care contract. But believe me, those life care contracts come with hefty.
Yeah, no, that wasn't what I was just thinking in terms of how.
I don't know if you guys have any CCRC type product in this area. I don't remember any from tours here.
I don't want to open it up to everybody here, obviously, but when a project like this is fully built and fully operational, what is the occupancy rate typically?
We'd like to look at stabilized occupancy as somewhere around 90%. Great communities run a little more like 92, 95, but there's still that turnover piece that very rarely you see 100%, but 90% is probably your typical stabilized occupancy. The whole industry has taken a big hit on that, though, in the last couple of years, as you can imagine.
Can shut up for the moment, open it up. Commissioner Lapp?
I have a question about the green space or lack of green space in this plan. My parents live at an assisted living community in Indiana, and one of the merits where they live is a lot of green space with paths and walking paths, and they actually have tied into the park system in the city that they're in, and they have a lot of room outside as well as inside, so it both increases the view from their apartment as well as the ability to get out and move around even as older people. It seems like you're really constricted here in terms of the outside space that's available, and for the independent living, I'm not sure that's a selling point. It seems like that would be a real issue. I mean, I don't think it's an issue for us in terms of the planning, but it seems like it's an issue for you in terms of your planning to make the area more appealing to potential residents. Because I like this idea, I think it's a great location for it. I'll be interested to hear other commissioners' ideas on changing the zoning in this particular area. But I think that, for me, in terms of just the plan, it seems like the lack of green space for this kind of a community is a problem. Even though people are in assisted living, memory unit even, outside space, green space is really important. And for the people in the apartments, it seems like having space around the apartments to be outside would be a real selling point.
I think that, I appreciate the comment, and I do think that the plan needs to be formed a little more, in a little more detail. It's a little more conceptual there, where you have. There is a discrepancy in some of the calculations, I think, with the areas, and that comes back to whether we include right-of-way areas in gross calculations in the water. And so I think we all sort of got mixed up and talked past each other in that, and that's all stuff we can work out. I think we're confident that we meet the ordinance and that we can meet the ordinance with what we have, but the comment about the marketability and the way it presents is very helpful. meeting the number is one thing, that's fine, but making it functional is a whole nother, so. I will tell you that a thing that we emphasize strongly is memory care courtyards or memory care gardens. So I don't know how
Yeah,
well
it's
we
between the two
illustrate
existing
that.
buildings, and then there's an assisted living, not enclosed courtyard officially, but fenced-in area at the plus sign.
We probably didn't sell it as well as we could in these documents, but, yeah. So thank you.
They do have some work to do. There is a green space or outdoor recreation requirement in the PV section, and as the report notes, there's some deficiencies in what they did. So they will have to deal with that.
I do have a question, just
Yes, sir.
now, so independent living in phase one, independent meaning they can come and go, have a car, leave, because I see a real lack of parking. Plus, the services that you're looking to offer, my concern would be about service vehicles getting in here, because we still have to have a location for a dumpster and all that. But,
So phase
I
one.
like the concept, I just think there's some of that.
So the independent living is actually phase two.
That's
It's-
phase two, I'm sorry.
It's the L-shaped building on the
Okay.
side that
So this one.
that
here-
clearly has not been as well formed from a design perspective.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah.
But, so the dependent living, or assisted living,
Yes.
over here, are they also gonna be able to allow the vehicle, or is that?
I would, yeah, I would say my answer is they're absolutely allowed a vehicle. I think that the reality of the situation is the average age of an assisted living resident is about 85 years old,
Yeah.
and they don't drive.
But if there's the potential and you sell it that way, you gotta have a place for everybody.
It's tough. I mean, I don't know what you've experienced with where your parents are, but I think we've all seen like the acuity creep of this industry. I'm particularly sensitive to it because I'm in it, but the assisted living resident of today is the nursing home resident of 10 years ago, and the independent living resident of today is the assisted living resident of 10 years ago. It really, I would tell you, most of our independent living residents don't drive. Now, that's our experience, that's not, I don't want to generalize, but it's pretty real. Now, we have a community in Connecticut, I bet you half the people there have cars, and they go to the grocery store and the liquor store, and they go out and walk their dog every day, and it's really situational, but.
And I think phase two brings that.
That's what we would love to
Right.
see. We would love to see that. The younger people move in, the longer they stay with you, the more vibrant it is, the more open the community is. I mean, how many times, I really don't, you see someone who's 80 years old walk into a building and look around and go, I don't want to live here with these people. Well, I mean, you want a vibrant community, but I think you end up, people don't move into assisted living or even into a congregate independent living building until there's a reason and a need, typically. So, we feel that need.
Again, if this project were to be put in place as proposed, any estimate of the amount of additional employment that would be provided by such a facility? I'm sorry, I used the wrong word, I'm sorry, community.
We call that the F word. And I'm the building guy, so I get sucked back into using it because I've been in these forums talking about facilities. Yeah, I did an estimate, and I honestly, off the top of my head, I did it for this reason, and I can't remember. But we are talking about more than, is it close close to doubling, if not more than doubling, independent living aside, just within the senior living licensed care portion, doubling the size of the community and the number of beds. So, you take your department heads out, I'm not gonna give you a non-answer, but I think it'll make sense. You take your 5 or 6 department heads out of the equation, we're gonna be doubling the staffing needed in the building as well, from when you look at the incremental staffing needed to care for the residents. Talking about roughly 40 more people. I'd say it's probably, 16 to 20 FTEs by the time you look at 3 shifts. That's really off the top of the head answer from a building guy, not an assisted living
And
operator.
I don't know that much about this type of operation, but are those, once you get below the supervisor level, are those jobs high paying, low paying, middle paying?
They're typically fairly entry-level jobs at the caregiving level. There's no debating that. You can go look it up. But the thing that is amazing about this industry, and this is coming from a guy who was a big association guy in the construction industry, and I came to the senior living industry as a builder and developer. The parallel between these industries is amazing. There's 2 places where I have seen repeatedly someone who can start as a $12 an hour, $14 an hour caregiver, ditch digger, helper, and I've seen them in a matter of years as an $80,000 executive director, if they have the aptitude and the desire. It is an incredible industry. Say construction too. These are both incredible industries for people who want to succeed and want to advance to do so. The opportunities are amazing. But the entry-level jobs are entry-level jobs. It's a tough staffing model.
Yeah, I think part of the, I think we all probably agree that this type of community is a growing need, right? It's something that more people are gonna need over time as people live longer and so on and so forth. But you're also asking us to trade, commercial property for something else, so there's obviously those trade-offs, so there are economic factors to take into account as well.
I guess to that end, you earlier talked about 90% occupancy. What kind of assessment has been done to demonstrate that there is a need? Because Commissioner Quattrito just said there's a growing need, but what evidence do suggest that that's the case?
We've done some research on several levels. One is just the global. You can pick up a paper any day and listen to the talk of the silver tsunami and the aging of the baby boom. That's real. And what's interesting is, I will tell you that it's real, but it's not here today. We're actually right now in sort of a trough. So I want you to understand, we understand our numbers. We're in a trough where if you take that 85-year-old assisted living resident right now, turn the clock back 85 years, you're going to find out you're in the middle of the Great Depression, and birth rates plummeting. So there are actually less 85-year-olds today. Our CEO used to love to say there are more old people today than there were yesterday, and there are going to be more tomorrow. And then we did that math, and we went, oh my God, there's less today. No wonder this has gotten hard. But the hockey stick demand curve is coming. That's a global thing. From a local perspective, we've done market studies. We hired a market study firm to do a market study for us here. It did demonstrate demand. And I spent time, I visited Crestwood next door. I visited Green Acres, is that correct? Visited with those folks. Let them know who we were. we were thinking of doing something in the community, and I'm not good at secret shopping people, it's not my style, I just walk in and tell people who I am, what I'm doing, and say, I'd love to tour your facility, you know? Do you mind if I look around? You're welcome to come do the same. And, when I toured them, they told me, you can get answers, people could tell you anything, but they told me they were full of waiting lists. I don't know that that's the case today, it's been for a couple of years. I hope for them, and for us it is. The gentleman that was here earlier is with, is a board member with Rose Bush Manning, that toured that facility when I was here before. Also full of the waiting list. So, I think, you know, the numbers sort of speak. And again, you guys are looking for growth. You're projecting growth. You're looking for in-migration.
If I could just add just a quick personal thought. My parents are currently in assisted living. They're in Florida. My parents are exactly in the trough that he's talking about. Parents were born in 37 and 39. 1946, the very beginning of the baby boom. Those folks are 76 years old this year, if I did the math right. So, yeah, there is definitely going to be a pretty strong growth in the number of potential people that will need the types of facilities that they're talking about. I've just toured, actually, because my parents are in assisted living, and we're thinking about it in Michigan. I just toured a number of facilities here, doing some research for them, including a fairly new one in Midland. And it was fascinating, talking about the little ringers and such, pull the cord, every day kind of thing. This particular one had some electric eyes, I think, in the condos for the independent living. This facility, I think, from the look of it, is very similar to what they're thinking. These are very nice facilities, and this existing facility here has been maintained, but it is definitely outmoded, and so there is a real need for there's a real need for this type of facility community. But also there is a definite need on this site to modernize what's there, and the only way to really modernize it is to grow it, because there's just not enough money in the existing facility to justify the modernization elements that are needed to make it work properly.
Yeah, I will tell you, I mean, we're in the business, we're absolutely in the business, but our business is taking care of people. And, the way our model has worked has been to work with owners of facilities like this that desperately needed capital infusions. And another interesting demographic is that the assisted living industry is really roughly 40 years old as a real growing industry, stepping aside from skilled nursing. And so if you think about the folks that were the investors and the early movers in that industry that may have been 40 or 50 years old then, well, guess what? They're 75 and 80 years old now, and they're looking to move into a building, and they're looking to get their money out of these buildings. And so we've really taken pride in being able to come in and allow some of the mom and pop developers and owners over the years to exit the business with a fair profit. And then for us to be able to step in and invest the funds into the businesses that they, at that point in their life, weren't willing to. It didn't make sense for them to. So that's really been a business model. But we are, our operating company was a Virginia-based company, but we started there 20 years ago. But we've gotten to the point in Virginia where we have owners regularly calling us saying, we are looking to divest. Are you interested? We have hospital systems calling us saying, we don't want to run assisted living anymore. Are you guys interested? Because we've done it. We have nonprofits, and we're not a nonprofit, that say, we've seen what you've done when you took over a nonprofit here. You took care of the families, you took care of the residents, you honored the employment with the staff. You didn't come in and turn everything on its head. are you interested in our building? So, we're really proud of what we've done. You know, look, we'd love to do it here. We look forward to working with you guys.
I guess one other question I want to ask. Yeah, I understand that, you know, a lot of your interest in this is, you know, yes, you're a company that likes to care for people, but you also look at this and see it as something that could be profitable, could be successful, could be, you know, whatever. If you think about the various other properties that you've been associated with or are familiar with, is it weird to have one of these abutting against general industrially zoned property to the north like that? Because it seems like, to me, it's a bit of a, I mean, the facility that was built, how old is that one that's out there, 20 or 30 years or more?
It was built in the mid-80s, 83 and 87.
Yeah, so almost 40 years old. It was very different, it was probably all open field back then and whatnot, but I guess I just wonder about that. It seems like a little bit of a weird location to put a community like that.
First of all, we don't build greenfield communities. We are an acquisition-based company, I will tell you. So I'm not going to stand here and represent myself as an expert at site selection. I probably would not make that my first pick at site selection.
So you all don't build them from scratch?
We do not build them.
Okay.
So I'm not an expert at site selection, but yeah, I can agree that that's probably would not be my first choice. But we have absolutely acquired buildings that were in more industrial settings, or, I mean, you can imagine, we've been doing this for 20-some years, and we've been buying buildings that were built in the 80s, 2000, early 2000s. We've bought buildings that were built we bought historic buildings from the late 1800s that were then repurposed over the years. And believe me, they are in every conceivable type of neighborhood and setting that you can imagine. So, again, I will say that it's, even with the independent living model, you're not, and I don't want to offend anybody, but the independent living senior is not someone who's living in the villages of Florida playing golf every day. That is not this resident. And so, living in, I don't think they need to, there's some wonderful models, there's some things going on in Lansing, I think, where the university has partnered with a senior living provider to do some co-located housing with students and seniors. I've seen things with daycare and seniors. Those are wonderful programs, but I don't think we're looking at a program where you're in a mixed-use, walkable community, because quite frankly, you're just, the independent living resident in most of these communities is not out walking to the grocery store. We need to make what we provide for them as attractive and livable as we can. That's our focus.
One questions from folks. To remind you, the recommendation on this is that we let them essentially revise their application and come back to it next month. Correct.
So, actually, one thing we have not talked about, in order to be on next month's agenda, you would need to have your updated plans back in Decatur next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Is that
It's
something
about a
you can do?
month, a lead time, right?
3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's what we asked for. Is that something, because, I mean, if that's not something that, we'd rather have the plans right than quick.
Yeah.
So from a.
Yeah, I guess,
Next Tuesday?
to speak,
I'll
speak
tell
out of
you, yes,
turn,
it'll kill me.
we'd love to have a working session with you guys and just spend an hour kind of going through stuff where we have our engineers and just make sure that you guys are as comfortable as possible. We work out through the other details too.
We certainly can. We'll take the next week or so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's
Yeah,
a problem.
I was not proposing that we have that done and back to you by Tuesday.
Okay, so with that,
I don't think that's a possibility.
so with that in mind, we're probably talking about planning commission seat in March rather than February? Because-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're saying next Tuesday would be the deadline for February.
February,
So yes, I mean, I don't want to rush things. I want to go through the comments thoughtfully and make sure that we've got them addressed. We don't need to come back in here with.
So, because we did have a proposed motion, so I would just suggest, the March date is actually also the 15th, so if you just substitute February for March in the motion, that will take care of that. You'll have to give them the time to put the plans together.
And then from the standpoint of us, really now is, you know, your opportunity to ask questions and frankly, to voice opinions. And because I think the other thing that I'm sure that they want to know, or would like to know, or I certainly would if I were them, is if anybody has any serious concerns about this and from the standpoint of just the whole idea of it or the project itself or what have you, so that, you know, they don't invest the time and then come back and get hammered 2 months from now. Admittedly, we're missing some people tonight, so there's gonna be possibly people here the next time who aren't here with me. But, like I said, anybody with concerns or questions, please voice them.
I do think there's a need, I think, for this type of system. Not sure about the location, because I'm going through it with my mother-in-law right now, who's ready to move out of her house because she can't maintain it. And so it's, her next step in this town is condo life, because she still drives and all that. Because there is not, don't say assisted living around her, because that's not what she needs, but she needs independent living. And independent living in this town doesn't necessarily have a good word. I mean, there are some in apartments in the city that's not desirable to her. The location though, because she's able to install a locker. So is it that you want to target a piece of property closer to town? Also, it's the, close to their doctors or close to their pharmacist and all that. So if you're in the next phase, the dependent living, is that too far out? It's a lot closer to the casino, but is it too far out? Maybe we shouldn't be encouraging that, no. Again, it's the location, and if you could bring it closer to town, is there property, along Isabella, where you phase out of the condo life into this life?
Right, but they
Because we had talked
don't
about-
build from scratch, right? They are taking existing facilities, so you have to go where the facility is, and
Or
that's where
the
this one is.
property is, because we're running out of facilities
Okay.
necessarily that would attract these groups. But we had, maybe 2 years ago, a doctor approached us and talked about maybe going down this path, because they saw a need for it, from a doctor's perspective.
I was gonna spin your statement and kind of as a statement / question to make sure I understand though, because I think what I just heard was really good feedback as far as marketability concerns that we should have. And maybe what your selection,
I'm looking at it
right,
from a needs standpoint.
what your selection process is right now.
Oh, yeah,
To your
yes.
point, this is the building we own. And so, I mean, we are not looking to go build something else, this is what we have, but I'm definitely hearing, and so, what I hear there is, we have to find ways to compensate for that. We have to, we are in an industrial area, and so, but the other question I guess I have coming for you is, when you say the location, what I heard you say was, as a prospective customer, the location was concerning to you. But as a planning commission member, I heard the question raised earlier, do we want to give up land that's zoned
Yeah, I heard that.
for that use?
Is
Now,
that the right location
again, the use, our use is already there, it's already, it exists. You know, if you do nothing, it might not exist forever, but, so, but I think we can provide a good product, I think we can provide a good service. The use is there. Are you trying, are you purposefully wanting to revert it to an industrial, to the chairman's point? You know, if this is a wonderful time, I'm happy to take it, I don't mind. I mean, so, if the commission is open to the change, then that's great. If you're not, then we just need to know.
If I may make just one quick comment on the commercial zoning, property zone B4, general business. During the process, we just went through that process of doing that punch list set of amendments. And one of the items that staff recommended, and you ultimately recommended approval of, was to alter the B5 and B7 districts, our other business districts, to add in the possibility of special uses, distribution center, light manufacturing, warehousing, some more employment center type activity. And as part of that discussion we had about that, we noted we're way over zoned that commercial. There's more commercial land zoned in the township than we really need. And when you add in the being way over zoned in the city also, we have a substantial glut of commercially zoned property. And so for this property to be converted to a PUD that would include these various types of senior and elderly housing would not harm in any way the township's position related to commercial zoning. We actually, on the industrial side, which is the land further up to the north, we are short of that, but this is not really an industrial property. We have residences across the street, we have offices next door. It's not a property I would convert to industrial, even if.
Thank you for that differentiation. So it's not an industrial, there is no industrial use, even though it's surrounded by industrial.
Yeah, so it's surrounded, to the north is industrial, to basically along Broadway, it's
Immediately.
business.
Okay. Thank you,
Commissioner Thurman?
You know, but kind of talking about what Mike said, if I understood what you were saying, Mike, about not having things close by, the needs, really, where is there in Union Township that would provide all of that? But, you know, you're only, 4 miles from the hospital, maybe another mile to, we'll say Myers, or 2 to Walmart, pharmacies deliver, and you might find if you build it, they will come, maybe some sort of medical facility will look to, they could provide services that they do not provide. You know, dentist,
I agree.
you know, I'm just thinking, hard to say.
A pretty standard feature to is, transportation to various outings, activities, to the store, to the doctor. I don't think we're unique in that. It's every assisted living that has their van with their logo and the handicap ramp with them. And we go out to the zoo and we go out to the doctor and we, so it's accepted. I really think the thing that I was talking about earlier, sort of this mixed use concept and integrated concept, is a very new cutting edge thing that you don't see very often. You just don't see that. And some people are developing it, and we'll see how well it sells. And I think it's a difficult model because I think what you find is that real estate's too expensive and it drives the cost of providing service. So it'll be interesting. I know you've seen a bunch of that, right? As an architect. I do have one other question sort of along those lines. There was a comment here, and I'm just going to step right into the breach on this one. There's a comment here about connectivity to the road north. Enterprise, thank you. And it mentions an easement, and I don't, anywhere in any of the title work that I have, see an easement there. So I'm trying to understand.
On the property to the north, there's an easement. It ends at your property.
Okay. And so I was sort of looking for maybe a little guidance, what was the driver or what's the desire? I mean, I don't want to guess at what you were thinking, I just, happy to have you tell me.
What this is in our report, we noted that it was important to have cross connections. You know, as we talked about commercial projects, we want property to connect together for vehicles, but also connect together for pedestrians. And so in our report, we noted that the property to the north has access to Enterprise Drive. If you look at the larger map there, you see Enterprise Drive coming south from Pickard Road. It ends at Venture Way, and there's an easement that continues. That's actually part of that right of way. It's a 66-foot wide right of way, I believe, correct? And that comes down to the north property line of this site and stops there. Now we're not suggesting extend Enterprise Drive down to Broadway. That's not something we want. But what we would like to see, what we've recommended, is that they provide a driveway connection to that right of way. There's a driveway that comes down from Enterprise. It accesses what's called the Helios Rising office building. But that's a right of way, and so this project could connect into that, which would allow people that might be using the site coming off of Pickard, they can come in off of Pickard, and you can access also residents that want to go north to Pickard in the commercial corridor, have an easier way to do that. And what we recommend is not only a driveway, but also have a sidewalk connection that goes up to that point. We are, the Helios Rising site in the north is also currently in the site plan process. They have struggled to get a plan together that we can bring to you. So they have, I don't think you've seen that one yet, but we have told them pretty much exactly the same thing, that they need to build the sidewalk along their part of that, that would connect up to Enterprise.
Are they directly to the north? That's the
Northeast, and then the
Yes.
southeast of that kind of driveway loop.
What's the use? What's their use? I'm sorry.
Well, the Helios Rising is an office building, and I think that site I have to go. You have the zoning actually.
Yeah.
Let's see what it says. So that's owned industrial to the north of you. The map on page 39 of your packet in our report, and they also have the super map of their information. You can see just basically north of the B, in the B4, the map, the extension of Enterprise Drive comes down to their property. Anyway, so it's something that would give a little more time, because I think you need to explore that. But that's our recommendation, is we get that cross connection.
It looks like they might have to go, if I'm looking at the plan correctly, they might have to go through that, one of those open areas. Which would affect that calculation. I don't know how close they were, and how tight that calculation was, but, and it does go back to, Commissioner Lapp's point about the green space and how it's laid out and how it's available to people and so on. But on the other hand, I in general, from general principle standpoint, I think the idea of having more than one way in and out of the community is a good idea.
And of course, our business district is to the north, and so having that connection, both for people that might walk up that way. Unfortunately, there are no sidewalks along Enterprise Drive, but it's on our list. That's part of our East Downtown Development Authority District. And so that's a there's a funding source potentially for that, to extend it further. But that's the direction we would want to send people if they're head to the business.
So the suggestion, I don't want to truncate things, but the suggestion is that we have a motion to postpone consideration of this until March 15th, and essentially ask them, they've already decided they're going to do it, but ask them to work with township staff to revise the proposal, the application to turn the little boxes into checks from the report.
If in the motion we use March, is that kind of limiting to them? Unless say they needed an extra time, could we just put for future?
Well, it's best when you're postponing action just to a date certain. Now, if they're not ready for the March meeting, then what would happen is we would have it on the agenda and you just postpone action.
Okay.
But we'd like to have, generally postpone action, we'd like to have a date. And so I think March gives them a date to aim for, and also, like I said, it's something we can then revisit it. Yeah, you basically, in the recommendation, if the third line down, if you just start with that, just change February to March, it works pretty well. For a motion.
The floor is open for commissioners, if anyone would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to postpone further review of the PREZ 21-03 request to rezone the parcels at 5785 East Broadway Road from the B4 General Business District to PUD Plan Unit Development to the March 15th, 2022 regular meeting, and to request that the applicant provide an updated PUD concept plan that fully addresses the provisions of section 3.19 PUD Planned Unit Development District for further review prior to the setting of a public hearing date.
So the motion was by Thering, second by Darren. Further discussion.
How will this postponement impact your proposed timeline?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. How will this postponement impact your original proposed timeline?
I mean, it's definitely less than ideal for us. I mean, we have a community that desperately needs to be expanded, and it will have a financial impact, but I mean, we have to work through the process. So, we have to work through the process, we have to have plans that work. I mean, I would love to walk in here and walk out with an approved plot project tonight, but I know that's not gonna happen, so we just lost, a couple of months.
And the second question is, you don't believe that the February timeline is doable?
I would love to, but as Mr. Scala, or Nanny said, that we're talking about having revised plans next Tuesday.
Okay.
So I don't see any way that by next Tuesday we could work through this, especially if there are some comments in there that we really would like to meet with staff and explore and make sure that we understand the comments and that we're properly addressing them. If it was as simple as add a couple trees here and move that there, yeah, Andy.
Yeah.
believe-
Any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, I mean, to me, the project looks like it'd be a great asset to the community. I think the question for us, the number one question, which wasn't really talked about a whole lot, I think it was touched on, that are we willing to go against our master plan? Sounds like the comments from staff that it would be okay because we have a ton of commercial space. So did I hear that correctly? And that we'd be going against our master plan, but in this particular instance, probably not a big deal. Is that fair to say?
And it's interesting that, yes, it's fair to say, it's interesting, if this was coming in as student housing, certainly all.
Think about that. We didn't have the PUD as an option in our previous zoning ordinance, correct? So that's really a new concept for us, or at least a new option for us. And so I'm not sure how that would have impacted. Yeah, I get the, I mean, that's, okay.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. So, any other comments? So, we're back live, so I don't know that we need a roll call. So all in favor of the motion to postpone to March 15th, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. So, thank you.
Thank you all once again. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Done.
Okay. So next item on the agenda is the proposed revision to our zoning ordinance, the text amendment application, P-Text 21-02 from Tony. This is regarding the metrical requirements for solar energy systems. So once again, I'll turn it over to Rodney and/or Peter for an introduction, and then we'll move into our discussion.
So thank you. You have our report dated January the 3rd and the draft ordinance draft dated December 28th, 2021. We of course heard from Mr. Coyne and his partner, solar energy business, several months ago. This proposal originally was brought to you to take a look at. This is a text amendment application, so it's not a little different in that they are kind of pushing for an amendment rather than an amendment being generated by staff or by the planning commission. They have asked for, as they discussed at that presentation, they'd like to alter our height limit, which is currently 20 feet for these solar arrays, make it 25. We did put together this draft amendment that addresses that. That's the part 2 element of the amendment. To make that simple change, the other change on there about roof mounted is just to make that section more consistent with the format of other sections of the ordinance by spelling out the word 5 and adding the word feet. So the change really is related to the 20 to 25 foot. As part of that, as noted in our report, from a staff perspective, we recognize that there was a need to really look at the setback requirements as we were doing this. Right now, the setback requirements are based on the underlying zoning district. Well, we just reduced the size of the setbacks in the business and industrial districts. We shortened those up a bit as part of that punch list. But the setbacks in for example, the residential districts or even the ag district are fairly short to begin with, the side yard. So it would allow these units to get fairly close. Now at 20 feet in height, they're not that much different than the height of, say, a pole barn or a garage, accessory structure. A little bit more, but fairly similar to the height allowed for those types of structures that could be close to a property line. 25 feet is getting more obtrusive. You're seeing a whole lot more of it from the neighboring property. And yet it could be, as page 49 of your packet, we list there the various setbacks, and various side yards in particular. It could get pretty close. And so what we proposed to do from a staff perspective was we proposed to include what's referred to as the third section of the amendment, part 3, propose some changes to the setbacks to establish specific setbacks that would apply to these freestanding solar energy facilities. And there are 2 types. The direct use, this is the type of facility that's fairly small usually. The energy generated is being used on site by the principal use of the property, whether it's an office building or a house or a farm. The primary use facility, this is the larger, what's sometimes called a commercial solar farm. It's a larger freestanding solar energy production system where that energy is going into the electrical grid. So the setbacks essentially are intended to try to address that. Smaller setbacks based on the height for the direct use facility, and then larger setbacks for commercial operation, because the commercial operations can cover literally hundreds of acres in some cases. They certainly often cover more than 30 acres. And so what we've recommended is that you include, we recommend that you proceed forward with their proposed change. They've asked for it, and allow that to proceed forward to a hearing. Well, we've recommended that you include the part 3 element as well to address setbacks and make that part of that same hearing process. There has not been any objection. Mr. Coyne is not here tonight, but he has not expressed any objection to the addition of the setback provisions.
Yeah, sure.
Are there any norms around the state for how other townships and areas have, municipalities have handled the solar, especially the ground mounted arrays? I don't wanna create something from scratch if there are sort of standards that are developing around the state that we could look at.
Actually, our ordinance is pretty good, overall. The setbacks are kind of a weak area, as I was looking at. We could get a whole lot more restrictive. We could add a lot of different standards, especially the commercial solar side. You'll often see, far more specific standards. I don't recommend that at this point. I think our ordinance covers the ground reasonably well to address any concerns that would come up.
But specific to setbacks, are there some standards from other areas?
Well, what you see is very, very
This is
similar.
pretty standard.
I've worked on these ordinances elsewhere.
Okay.
And 200 feet for projects that are over 2 acres, absolutely, it's very standard.
That's 200 feet from all four sides in a perfect world.
Exactly, yep, yep.
So if I'm reading I'm comparing the table with the existing setbacks on page 49 to what you're proposing. The existing ones are pretty small, they're anything from 10 feet up to 50 feet, and you're proposing 75, so that would be an increase, and then obviously 200 for the larger property. I guess my only question is, are there any scenarios where what you're proposing would be restrictive enough to prevent somebody who wanted solar panels from doing that? I guess is really kind of.
Well, yes, yeah, if somebody wanted to build a freestanding array on a small residential lot, certainly some small lots that might not be able to meet these setback requirements. But, you have to keep in mind, these freestanding arrays are very visible. And so it's in those circumstances, you probably don't want one in the backyard, where it would be close to the neighbor's lot line, where the neighbor's basketball would bounce in and break something, or whatever. It's something where you do actually want to have a setback. There's actually another reason for the setback, and that is related to sun access. One of the big challenges that comes up is one person puts up a solar array and the neighbor has a tree growing. And that tree grows in front of to a point where it blocks the array, and you get into arguments over light access. By expanding the setbacks, it reduces that potential somewhat. So there's good reason to have these units away from the property.
We actually, so am I reading this, now that I see this, the part you crossed out in red, we already did have 75, is that right?
Actually, that's for the primary use, so that's for the commercial operation.
Okay.
You see there, the direct use facility, which is the middle column under that existing table, shall conform to the setbacks per zoning, so for that district. So the setbacks are exactly as you said in the table in our report. Somewhere, in some districts as small as 10 feet, many of them 20 feet.
So it was the private, individual, non-commercial ones that we didn't address independently in this section before.
And it's just, as we talked about, even 75 is short for a commercial solar farm. I don't know if you've been through the Lapeer area. There's a number of places around the state where they are built or are building these very large-scale commercial solar energy production facilities that, as I said, that can cover hundreds of acres. Those setbacks, 200 feet is a fairly standard number for that. And the reason is because they're visually intrusive. It's acres of solar. If you like that, it looks beautiful. If you don't like acres of solar, it's very intrusive.
Where did you say that was?
Well, there's an existing site in Lapeer that dates back a number of years, but there are actually quite a large number of facilities either recently constructed or even under construction right now. There's one, Leonard, I think, middle of the state, west of Flint. I think it's along M13, if I recall the road, that's right now under construction. There's another one out Battle Creek area somewhere. There's a number of these around the state that are going up.
So So we get enough sun here that they're commercially viable.
Remarkably, yeah, and it's really because of how much more efficient the solar panels are. You know, they say that they'll generate enough electricity to be commercially viable even with snow on them. Now, most of the older solar panels were fixed, you know, and you might see if you drive around, especially down towards southeast Michigan, DTE put up a few of these fixed panels where they're just at a certain angle and they don't move or anything. Well, the ones that are going up now on the commercial side, they rotate, they follow the sun. Many of them rotate just on one axis. What Mr. Coyne has proposed, obviously rotates, you know, two axes. And so he, as he mentioned in his presentation, it's the most efficient, makes the most efficient use of Michigan sunlight. But even, like I said, most of the commercial solar will be oriented north-south, their axis so that they rotate east to west and catch the morning sun and the evening sun.
So, questions or comments?
Yeah, so in general, you feel that the 75 feet's not gonna really hinder a residential, you know, home from any of their, or obstruct anything from their view, and at the same time, it's not gonna be too limiting on the person wanting to put them in? It's kind of maybe a middle ground, would you say?
Yeah, I think that works for the smaller projects.
Yeah, that 2 acres or less is kind of really what I was thinking.
Yeah, and frankly, on the
Yeah.
primary use title, we have one, the Lone Maple project you saw in 2000. You know, is one that's a primary use. Was it one that they were going to the grid with that, or was that all? Yeah. So that was a primary use that's on a fairly small site, but that's actually pretty rare. Most of the time, the primary use where they're going supplying power to the grid are going to be a much larger property.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Well, if you are good with this, we can have a motion to, so this is a rezone, so we're actually, this goes through a public hearing.
That's correct.
So we would be giving the green light to go ahead and schedule the public hearing presumably for next month, is that right?
That's right. In the recommendation, page 50 of the packet, the second paragraph, if you chose to, could be made into a motion. It directs staff to include the setback, and then it sets a hearing date of February 15th. If you're comfortable with it, it could be done for February 15th.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to include the additional proposed amendments to the minimum setback standards as part of the proposed P-text 21-01 zoning ordinance text amendment to increase the maximum allowable height to ground-mounted solar energy facilities and to set a public hearing date for the February 15th of 2022 regular meeting.
The motion was made by Commissioner Barron, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shingle, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So, further discussion? So, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So, we'll have that in February. So the next item, patiently waiting, is the final site plan review, that's PSPR 21-19, Graphic Central Edition, 1580 Park Place. We approved the preliminary one in November, I believe. And so it is back, and you have the plan in your packet, and the memo from Peter, I believe it is. So, is there anything you want to say, the introductory nature?
As I said, you do have our December 21st memo. I would just like to say, Peter and I are very happy to recommend this to you without any conditions. The site plan fully meets our ordinance requirements and is ready for approval.
Okay. Anything you want to say?
JBS contracting, and really nothing to add. I think
checked all the boxes, and just looking for approval to get the beginning.
Okay. Well, I assume you'll stand for questions if the commissioners have any.
I certainly will.
The way it's set up, and I think I know the answer to this, but, they've requested the waiver, or whatever word we use, on the sidewalks. Because that request is in the plan, if we approve the plan, then that becomes part of what we approve.
That is
So we don't need a separate, like, condition to do that.
No, you don't need anything added to that.
All right.
If I can add one thing, when we did the outside agency approvals and looking at the road commission, Park Place is not actually a public road. So that is actually a private drive. From the corner in, it's not even a road. The county doesn't take ownership of the road, the city doesn't take ownership of the road, nor do they maintain it or participate in any of the road activities. The occupants that live on there, that have businesses on there, being graphics and Malley Transport, actually plow their own road, they gravel their own road, they maintain that road, so.
I'll add just one caveat. I don't disagree with anything you said. This property, as of January 1st, this area, including the site, became part of the East Downtown Development Authority District. We worked all through last year to both re-up and extend the life of the East DDA district for 20 years, but also to expand it in a couple of different areas, this being the most important one, where we incorporated all this industrial area that includes Park Place, includes this property, into the East DDA district. We did that for a very specific purpose, and that was to be able to target East DDA district funds to fixing and upgrading these roads so they would become county public roads. These roads were intended to be public roads when the developer that developed these properties back in the 70s was working, but they never finished it. And so part of the area, Corporate Drive, was made public. But the rest of it, the roads were left as private roads. And the challenge is they're not all season roads, they're not up to the specs for county public roads. So that also makes it very hard for this industrial land to be developed for activities that we require heavy truck traffic, for example. So the East DDA district and our EDA board have made it a priority to work with the property owners. These are private roads, but work with the property owners and own the rights of way to get these roads updated and approved to the point where the county will take them over and where they will be considered all-season roads for heavy truck traffic. And that, by the way, not just Park Place, not just Park Drive and Corporate Way, the internal roads in this little area, but also, very importantly, East Airport Road, which is the road, east-west road across the north, which is dirt at the moment, and Packard Street, which is the north-south road going down to M20. This is all to try to improve the ability to develop this land for its intended use. So there's funding in the 2022 budget to get this started, and we'll start working with the road commission on what needs to be done to make that happen. So while they are what they are right now, there is an active township effort to change what they are, do for better.
So, one question, I just want to make sure I understand. There's a comment in your report about a berm, and you refer to it as the berm along Park Place. The only berm I see on the actual plans is on the north side. And so the one that you say it's okay if they don't have isn't even shown on the plans, is that right?
Right. What it was is our landscaping section 10, has language in it that suggests a berm requirement along the front of the property line as part of the landscaping. And they had very, very good reasons for not putting a berm in related to drainage patterns and such. It didn't make sense at all to have one. They're not screening anything from anybody, and so they proposed to not include it. In our section 10.7 modifications allows them to propose that, allows you to prove it. And so the plan you see does not have it. And there was a note basically addressing that. And as our report says, we have no objection. There's no need for a berm at that location.
Questions from people, comments?
I was just really impressed. It was such a clean presentation. This is only my first year on this planning commission, but I've never seen I've never seen a site plan this clean. So that was refreshing to look through it and see that you'd answered all the questions.
We just put an addition on this building 2 years ago. We've just been through this, so we know.
Well practiced.
Yeah.
Ready to entertain a motion?
I am always ready to be entertained, let's put it that way. But yes.
Okay. I move to approve the PSPR 21-19 Graphic Central revised final site plan for 6,000 square foot building addition and associated site improvement at 1580 South Park Place, parcel number 14-011-30-001-13 in the southwest quarter of section 12 in the B14 general business zoning district, finding that the December 6, 2021 site plan can comply with, I'm sorry, I jumped down to my eyes jumped down to the bottom. Finding that the December will fully comply with the applicable zoning ordinance requirements for the final site plan approval, including section 14.2.p, which is required site plan information, and 14.2.s, which is the standards for site plan approval.
Okay, so the motion to approve has been made by Shingles, is there a second?
I have a question. Stan, did you say section 12?
Section 11.
I for some reason I heard section 12 and I apologize. So you were referencing section 11?
Please.
I would second that then.
Okay, so the motion was by Shingles with a second by Theron. I think once it's committed to paper, you go by what's on the paper, right, not what people verbalize.
Well, I try to go on paper, but sometimes the motion gets changed a little bit, so I go on what everyone says. But he clarified 11, so.
All right. That makes sense. Further discussion? Yeah.
So, clarification, they've requested the sidewalk on the print. So because it's written on the print, if we accept this site plan, we accept that they get temporary relief.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we understood it because they did a great job of noting it in the notes for, so, okay, just wanted to verify, thank you.
Yeah. Other discussion of the motion? No, all in favor of the motion to approve the site plan, the final site plan approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Approved?
Thank you.
Thanks for your feedback,
So the next item, the last item of other business for tonight is the Parks and Recreation Master Plan update. So you recall, we have the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which dates from about 10 years ago, a little bit more. And so we need to update it, and so information from the public on their preferences and thoughts. First item is review of current recreation goals to identify initial project focus areas and then discuss potential survey format and questions. You don't have introduction by staff, but is there anything you want to say at the outset?
One thing, state, really have two items tonight, is to look at the goals. We've included the goals for various recreation planning projects, both with Township, City, and regional. And so, if there are things in particular you feel are important as we start this project that we should be focused on, I encourage you to note those. The additional one, the one you didn't see last month was the Chippewa River Master Plan that just recently wrapped up. And so, include that for information as well. We did include, as you said, kind of an initial draft of a potential survey. This is not intended to be cast in stone in any way. We essentially pulled questions from various sources. We don't have a copy of the survey questions that were asked as part of the previous project. We basically have the answers and the topics, but that survey was done as a telephone survey, so the questions were probably different than we would do in a mailed survey anyway. The challenge today is with cell phones and the loss of landlines. The telephone survey is really tough to find people and to find the right demographic of people. We could certainly hire somebody that can help us figure that out, but that's a pretty tough go. And so we were looking at potentially a mailed survey. Anyway, these questions are some things we could ask. We can use them, we can change them. Like I said, if there's something else we should be looking for, or some other topic that you're interested in that we should gather information on. We're just trying to get some feedback tonight on that. If you're comfortable with this, we obviously move ahead with it, but we're also, I'm expecting that we will be making adjustments to it and bringing back kind of a final version to you. So open to discussion, looking forward to it.
3A, I think the choices of our parks is great, but I think we ought to throw other in there and see if people are going to other parks, and maybe then we could take from that what amenities they have there.
Thank you.
By other, you would mean like something outside of the township?
Outside of the township, but maybe in the city, are they going there for the river? Are they, which could be a leading question, other park, why, or amenities. But maybe it's something we can't provide within our parks, so we have no control. Maybe it's something, Frisbee, whatever it is, that maybe we could invest in and put into one of our parks. That's what I was trying to get at.
If you did that, if you added other as an option, I would add a line which asks them to say which one.
Yeah, agree, and why would be nice. What don't we provide?
Number 5 does ask.
Meg, say
for
number
that
5.
question.
Throw number 5 right in with 3A, or,
But it might not be a bad, it might be a good idea to ask it 2 different ways to try to get responses.
or at least move it closer so that it corresponds with, while they're thinking it in their head.
Or if you really do want to limit it to those 2, then maybe say which Union Township park do you visit most often?
Okay.
Because that would be, those are the only 2, correct, currently.
And then probably, as you said, maybe move 5 up to fit underneath it, so that you get to the other park element.
Maybe make 5, 3B, so it's just a continuous part of 3A.
Yeah.
But it's its own individual question. That might be a good approach. Okay. Although it's not a box check, it's a written response, but I don't think that really matters. Format.
If we were to ever learn from this, that we find a lot of citizens go to a park over here.
Chippewa.
Yeah, but, yep, and they just love it. And we just can't make ours do what that does. Would we consider taking some of our funds to help make that even better if our citizens are using, our township citizens are using it? Kind of like Hannah's Bark Park, you know, that's the city, but we all got involved with that for all the right reasons. To me, if we had a survey back that said, they go to Chippewa Park, and this is why, and, you know, we can maybe get close to what that does, but not really. Would we say, you know what, let's,
We absolutely collaborate, and my suggestion would be is that we're not trying to duplicate what the city of Mount Pleasant has or what the county parks facility have, but really complement one another. But the city and the township absolutely collaborate. Hannah's Bark Park, Mission Creek Park is an excellent example of that. We have another one going on right now, which is potentially starting up, which is Indian Pines, which is an undeveloped piece of parkland the city owns north of the airport, northeast of the airport. That it's city-owned land in the township, as is the airport, frankly. Right now, there are no facilities. People just park off the side of the road and kind of use some informal hiking trails that are there. The city would like to look at doing something with it. And so Mark Stuhleberry and I met with the city parks director just a couple weeks ago. And I just had an email from him today, in fact, on this topic, to look at doing some discussion. They would like to invite us to be a part of the discussion as they're looking at a long-range master plan for developing that park. So that goes on all the time, and I suspect out of that might come some kind of a request perhaps in the future for some kind of financial help, with financial input into that, as we've done with the Bark Park, as will likely happen with the city's plans to extend their pathway up to Mission Creek Park, and we'd like to extend up to River Road, so that will probably also be something that comes to the Board of Trustees eventually, as that gels into a project. So there's definitely plenty of collaboration between the
I was also thinking that if we can't, say it was Chippewa Park, people want to go fish on the bay there. We don't have any of those facilities. But if there's a lot of people that say they go drive over to do that, that's another nudge to sidewalks and pathways, is to help with the connectivity.
good call,
For the
yeah,
township to get there.
yeah, that would be.
You know, there, and I'm not sure where I see it in here in a survey form, but safety is big for a lot of people, but everybody feels pretty comfortable going to McDonald Park. Pretty well lit up and everything. Is there a consideration about putting in could you fit a 1 mile walking path that people come and park and walk around? It gives them a place to go instead of wandering down by the river and through the city. And
Yeah, if you didn't want to travel through the woods.
if you didn't want to do that, you wanted to go someplace, meet your girlfriend or friend, and you walk the 1 mile track and you do that, right? We put lighting.
Similar but different. You could do it in the evening, you could early morning.
Before work, after, yeah, so.
What was there had been discussion before about trying to connect McDonald Park with the Commission on Aging. Is that just never gone anywhere because of easements, or?
Well, essentially, they do connect.
They connect at their driveway.
There is a connector between there's one point where our pathway in the park connects over to the Commission on Aging. So that's
Does that
actually
be
been
part
done.
of that route?
Yes.
But if
So-
we get the sidewalk up to Union Township Hall and then a sidewalk or pathway in from there, that'd be less clumsy, because I've walked that numerous times. It's very clumsy coming through Commission of Aging and in the back door of the park, so.
Yeah, there are definitely opportunities to do more, and there really would be an opportunity to do a perimeter walking path that goes around the baseball fields and, go around that edge there. It's actually really nice back there. And they can come out, come forward. I think that's a great addition.
Could you ask that as a
It would
question
be.
on the survey?
That's a great idea, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely had a specific question on that.
A lighted path.
Yes,
Yep.
Lighted,
Yeah, that's
maintained, lighted, maintained path.
yeah. You'd be surprised that it would get used. I mean, lots of times when I go for a run at night, what is it, I don't know if it's, Washington, it's lit right up, going into campus,
For me, because I live out Pickard, there is no safe way, and I've done it many times, to walk along Pickard, let alone ride your bike on Pickard. It's very unsafe. So for my wife and I, it's to drive in to a location and park. Well, we're going to the city, and we're parking down from Freddy's. So, and we walk that trail. If we had a location at Union Township Hall, which has excellent parking, we could do that. The grandkids could be playing on the nice playset, but we could be walking around, whether it's dark or not. And it
make it extra
could
wide.
be plowed in the winter. There's just another nudge.
Question 6, and then the follow-up is really good. But should we add in question 7, because we're talking about priorities and we're talking about various demographics, should we include citizens with disabilities to get a gauge on how that should be prioritized in these other demographics?
Thank you. That's a very good addition. Absolutely.
What is the difference between youth and teens? Are you saying youth in like the 8 to 12 category?
I don't recall precisely the definitions of it. I would say preteen, adolescent age would be, and we don't have to differentiate. We just simply say youth, and that would cover the ground. But teens, usually you're looking at those 14, 15, just before their driving age, where they have different priorities, different interests.
Should we just spell that out? Because if we're questioning it, maybe we need to spell it out, because I look at 14, 15-year-olds dropped off at a park. But how entertained are we keeping them? Are they doing the basketball? What are they doing at the park? Hopefully not just, well, we want them to hang out, I guess, but in a good way, so.
Yeah, we could just define that in terms of what we're looking for with youth, and if that's 6 to, or 5 to 13, or 5 to 14, or whatever, and teens are 15 to 18, however we decide to do it. If we just put it in parentheses, then it'll define it for whoever's taking the survey.
Yep, I think that's a great addition.
And on question 9, I just had a question about the order of the choices. I mean, the other ones are kind of on a scale, but these are not organized by a scale, and I didn't know if that was purposeful or not.
I think they may have simply gotten out of whack as I was putting this together. I can certainly make sure they're organized. There's some, I mean, you see, for example, question 7, those are not in order either, age by age.
Right.
And to some extent, that's to avoid bias, where somebody might always check the first row or whatever. But yes, these, and we may reorder this and have a scale or scale across in boxes for them to hit, so it's more of a range across.
Do you need as many choices?
Well, this is essentially I suppose you might say it's a 1 to 5 scale, what it comes down to. Maybe that's what we change it to, is just to say, it gives us a number of 1 to 5, and don't know, and so we just changed it to that format.
Instead of don't know, I might suggest don't use the parks, because really that's what don't know is implying, right? Because if you don't have an opinion on the parks, you're probably not using the parks.
Right.
And that would also give you information then on how many people check that.
That's a good idea, thank you.
Yeah, that is.
And maybe with 11, in order to not bias it, because I think it'd be consistent with 12, is maybe put it in alpha order, because it appears that 12 is in alpha order, so that might be a good way to do it so that it doesn't appear, everybody wants upgrades to these existing parks and rec facilities, so that's, and it looks like we prioritize that as the number one thing already, because essentially that would be the last thing if it was in alpha order.
Okay. So you basically want to move that down here to the bottom?
And then where you need to move concentrate on maintaining up after build aquatic facilities, and then it would be in alpha order. And then move upgrade existing parks.
Are we still including the build aquatic facilities because we don't have one yet, even though the discussion has started?
I think that's a good one on the aquatic authority, and obviously we're still trying to evidence that needs to be done. We're not, you know, we're still moving towards it. We're not there yet, so anything that can help to continue to inform that narrative, I think, is a good thing.
And that was actually, I particularly that one was put in there with that thought in mind.
Of course, on that page, there is no question 10, so that'll be correct.
Oh, that's true.
You're right.
I didn't even notice that.
Thank
We
you.
just leave room for more questions. And again, with 13, I think just being consistent and putting those in alpha order is the same thing. These are just small things.
Can you tell us if the pavilions are underutilized or overutilized, or there's a greater need for nice pavilions?
I can't tell you right offhand. Part of the challenge we have is that during much of the past 2 years, the pavilions weren't rentable. So I don't have any good data to work with on that. I do know that they are popular, or they were popular, but I don't really know the numbers right offhand. We have, the McDonald Park has some beautiful pavilions. We have a very large one. Both of them are very comfortable and nice size, nice location, open and airy, but still sheltered. Jameson Park has a smaller one. It's a little more isolated. It's behind the buildings, kind of tucked away. But it's a nice place, for example, for parents because it's right next to the playground. New play equipment that was put in. So, I mean, there's always opportunities for more. If we built another pavilion, I suspect it would get used. If we became more proactive in terms of seeking rentals and putting it out there, I suspect that we would get more. One of the challenges with the township, unlike the city, we don't have a parks department. Our public facilities department takes care of physically the grounds, and they do take care of renting, but it's not a proactive thing. You know, if they get a call, they'll have you rent it, just as we do at Jameson Hall. But there's no proactive element like the city has in terms of a recreation program and a recreation department. So we are limited in that at the moment in that way.
Do we even have space for another pavilion in McDonald's?
I would assume we could probably find one if we wanted to.
Couldn't you do something smaller like you see in Island Park?
Yeah, something small.
When you drive around, you see a few smaller pavilions just kind of spaced out.
I think if we put something in McDonald Park next to the playground area, a smaller one like that, I suspect it would get a great deal of use from
Yeah, I
parents.
think it would as well.
But that would be if you could formulate a question around that specifically. Has there been a desire for a smaller covered facility.
I'd call it a pavilion, because if you call it a facility, it starts sounding like an enclosed building.
And I didn't know if, you know, a lot of people come and eat lunch at McDonald Park, and whether there'd be a desire for a more structural umbrella over some tables, something permanent that you didn't put up and down. It was a hard fixture that wouldn't blow away in the 70-mile-an-hour straight winds, but you would get, you know, you would have the rain or the sunshine beating on you if you sat there. And I just wondered if there would be a desire for that in the current park.
I think the umbrella format would probably not be conducive there. It is windy. We have, there's a lot of open land to the west, and so you get a good breeze through there. I think if we're going to do something, we'd probably do a small pavilion.
You could even make the pavilion on the west side have more of a, just a little more of a slant than maybe necessarily the east side, because typically people are there in the afternoon, not necessarily first thing in the morning, and it's cooler out. So as people are coming in for ball games or whatever, or just coming for lunch, you know, the sun's not gonna typically be right underneath, but in the late afternoon and the hotter time, you know, you'd get that protection.
That would be another question, is there enough heat? Because I've been there in the summer graduation party where it's still open air, but it was quite warm. And I don't know if it would be worth a commercial ceiling fan that potentially you could utilize.
You know, I will say this, first of all, anything's possible. There's certainly commercial fans that are built to be outside in humidity, with the humidity maintenance so isn't there. And also, unfortunately, we just had an issue with theft in the parking lot of the Township Hall, where we lost a catalytic converter on one of our trucks. And I would assume that a fan like that would probably be very attractive. So as much as I'd like to put it in there, I don't think, I suspect my public service instructor, Kim Smith, would absolutely say no. But from that perspective, I would not want to put it in there.
Maybe we get a few more trees out there, you know, not the small ones, maybe a little bit bigger. That's
Trees are never a bad thing.
never a bad thing. That's right.
To Commissioner Darren's point, I know on campus we're looking at tables with canopies, not tents, but fixed canopies that have solar panels, that have electric, where people can plug in laptops, and we're also looking at hotspots, because that's what this next generation wants. They want to be able to have access to those things, and that can be really popular. I mean, think about the number of tournaments that go on out there, and people are out there for 6, 7, 8 hours, you know, for a baseball tournament. And to have that kind of amenity, you know, of course, you're never going to have enough of them, but to have some would provide something new and different.
Yeah,
Especially when we talk about emerging trends.
That's a great idea. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. We can work in so many places.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a beautiful spot to work if you have access to the Wi-Fi and to plug in charging.
I was in Texas last year, and it was at a planned community, and they had, and these things are vandal proof. You can, I mean, much of it's stainless steel. You can take a baseball bat to it, and it's not going to damage the canopy. It's not going to damage the table. So there are products out there that could meet some of those needs and just be different, because those are things we currently don't have in the city or in the township, for that matter, or on campus.
Could we try one and see how sacrificial it is?
Yeah.
Whether it draws the bad actors or not.
Right. Yeah, excellent.
Because I know the pavilions I've never used the pavilion in amplifier or whatever for music. Those are real popular. And to get one that's solar, you know, now we're talking about sustainability, so there's lots of new products out there.
Yeah, no, well, I believe the Pavilion's McDonald Park, I think you have a south-facing roof line, if I recall, on both of them. I can't remember which way the Jameson Park slopes, but that actually ties in very well with the Board of Trustees' goals, because the Board of Trustees updated their goals and included renewable energy as an important focus for the township, so I think it's excellent.
That's a great idea out there
Mm-hmm.
in the park.
That's the place to start, right
Yeah.
there.
Well, we tried it with the windmills, wind generators, sorry, not mills, but the wind generators and the solar panels. You know, if you have the square footage, we can put our ordinance to the test and show people what it looks like and then reap the rewards from it.
Other comments on the survey? Overall, I think it's really good. And I know the argument about keeping it short, but on the other hand, you want information. What is your thought about, and I like the idea of making it available online, for example, because it just seems like in this day and age to mail things out, like a 2 or 3 page survey out, to mail it out. I mean, maybe you need to do both to reach everybody, but it just seems so kind of archaic. But I guess what I'm thinking is like some sort of inducement, like a prize or prizes, if people fill it out.
Yeah.
I know what I would want, but, you know, maybe you guys can come up with something.
You have to code probably, some kind of code on all the surveys so that you can pull one that's completed or whatever.
Yeah, if you do it by written, you would, but if you do it online, you could do it,
Oh, yeah.
you could probably do that in there or something.
Now Phil opened up the door, I gotta know, what prize would you want?
I want some Union Township swag. I want a shirt with one of those embroidered, like, you know, the thing on it. I guess you have to be an employee to get one, but I would.
Actually,
Or actually a coffee mug, that's what I would really want.
if
I
you
would
want
get
one, you'd have to pay for it, sorry. Part of the perks of being an employee, we do have a small uniform budget, and so we get a shirt or two every year, but, I'm sorry, there's no uniform budget for you, I'm sorry. But I will say this, that you could go with CNC Enterprises on Packard Street and order something from them. They would embroider it for you, just you have to pay the cost for it. They have the patterns there, and they have catalogs. They have some things in the house that if you want to look through their, they have a nice clearance rack. It's mostly summer stuff, but you also can order. They have a couple of catalogs. Get some if you want.
Anything else? Have we given you enough to go on?
This is certainly very, very good. I guess I would say, are there any other thoughts, or are we heading the right direction?
I think so.
Yeah.
Was there anything from the goals that stood out to you that we really want to make sure we focus on that as part of what we're doing?
What I like it is it looks like there's an attempt to assess where there are gaps in play areas, park areas or whatever, looking at soccer fields that are, you know, that's not really a priority in the township. You know, the dog park obviously is in the city, and the outdoor ice arena, of course. We're actually looking at one on campus, and I know that the city just did one. And so, it seems like that's been well thought out, that these are some of the deficits and trying to find some ways to get those on the map.
to be able to add to those things.
Yeah, I think for me anyway, I think the most important thing is to not duplicate stuff that's already out there. And to
Burn the battery.
Well, we've been known to do that too.
Well, thank you. That's excellent.
All right, well, thanks for that. So then, just to wrap up the meeting here, we have, extended public comment. So if there's anyone who would like to address the planning commission on any item, whether it's on tonight's agenda or not, you're welcome to do so at this time. We ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Extended public comment is open at 9:53. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that back up. Final board comment. It's almost 10, don't want to be long here, but I do want to say a couple things. First of all, I want to pay tribute to our departed member, Alex Fuller. His departure was kind of awkward, I guess, in the sense that I think when he submitted his letter of resignation, I think there was a hope of convincing him to change his mind. And so that's one reason why it didn't get processed through in the normal way. But he served on this group for upwards of 20 years. He was already a veteran when I came on board. I learned a lot from him. I think he brought a unique set of expertise and commitment and certainly integrity over the years, and I enjoyed serving with him, and I feel like it's a real loss for us. So I want to thank him for his service and just recognize that. That's number one. And then number two, in relation to the earlier public comment, I understand that people, have concerns perhaps sometimes about, they should. I mean, certainly the Board of Trustees should look at how we do our jobs and should monitor that and have their opinions and so on and so forth. But I guess I really was taken aback by the language that was used, the tone that was used. I certainly took umbrage at the idea that I'm not doing my job. And I think most of you, all of you, I think I would feel the same way. And I certainly wish that if those had been the concerns, that there had been a way of sharing with us in a different way other than a public dressing down in front of applicants, no less. So I'm pretty upset about that. I'm really unhappy about that. We've come to the end of our agenda. Does anybody else have any comments that they'd like to offer?
I'd just like to echo what you just said, because that kind of came out of nowhere for me, and I didn't know if that was coming as a citizen or as a trustee. I wasn't sure, because it seemed like it was that kind of blended together, so I wasn't really sure, and obviously if there's some concerns, then we should address them, but, a public dressing down like that is totally inappropriate from the seat that I sit in. I don't care if you are a trustee, that's not the way you interact with professionals. If we interacted with the trustees like that, they would probably be trying to find a way to eliminate us from this commission. So, and that's a two-way street. To get respect, you have to give respect. And that was totally disrespectful. And I hope that that's recorded, because I want that to be public record. I was totally offended by that, especially when fingers started pointing. That's totally inappropriate.
person who's a trustee is supposed to have a duty of loyalty, a duty of obedience, and a duty of care. And all three of those things were breached in that rant. And that's disappointing.
And again, you know, certainly in their roles as trustees, they should be watching our meetings, they should be paying attention to what we're doing, and they should be expressing concerns as they have them. But it's a matter of doing that in a way that is constructive and that is going to, you know, get at things in a way that isn't gonna be, kind of what we saw tonight, so. And he's been on there a long time, and I don't, you know, overall, I've generally found Bill to be a kind of a reasonable guy over the years. So he's obviously upset. I'm not convinced though that his concerns are justified, certainly not in a broad sort of way. And so, yeah.
I would just echo, you know, Chair Squattrino and Commissioner Shingle's comments. You know, I would think that if there was an issue with, you know, with Commissioner Fuller, or in this case, Trustee Houck, if there's an issue with one of us or multiple, just can you make a phone call or find a way to talk about it? I mean, because at this point, I mean, who knows who they're even talking about? I mean, is it, you know, I opened my packet because it's, you know, not this one, but the other ones, or are they referring to me that it looks like I'd come unprepared when all I did was seal it back up after I spent a week preparing? Or this previous week preparing? I have no idea who they're talking about. I think it would be beneficial if whoever they are concerned about, reach out to that person and maybe gather some more information on how they're preparing, if that's a concern. I mean, that to me would be the first step before, and if there's no progress made or nothing done, then if this is your last resort, okay. But I think there were some steps missed there, and I think that's what Commissioner Shingles is referring to, and I would agree with.
I do think that it would be worthwhile to reach out to the trustees to perhaps find out, I don't know, Commissioner Tiering is the right person to do that, or our chairperson would be the right person to do that, because I do think it's worth finding out what the issues are. As one of the newer members of the board, I immediately thought, this was directed at me, because my background is not in construction, my background is not in zoning. So, what am I doing on this commission? Well, I'm a member of the public who has an interest in an investment in the community. So that's why I put my name forward. But, right, we all have different opinions as to who should serve on different township and public boards. But it would be good to know what the issues are so that we could address them.
I would be happy to ask that question of the supervisor and let the supervisor handle that accordingly. I don't think we need everybody jumping in on that from a trustee, you know. I'll let him know of that thought. I think that's fair. You know, many people prepare differently. In fact, I had a conversation with Supervisor Milkey a week or so ago, kind of talking about Commissioner Fuller, and you know, I'm not as experienced as maybe Doug or Mike, or, you know, and when I go to business, I go a certain way. And I was just kind of talking with him, I'm like, it'd be nice for, you know, I'll use Rodney as an example to say, you know, how do we just, let's make it simple. Let's not try to go from A to Z. Let's just go A, you know. How do we apply a basic site plan to the master plan? You know, what is your process? Because I might go, okay, that's great, or I'm already doing that and I can move on. Or special use permits, you know, just one day, we kind of briefly talked about that. Maybe having something about talking about special use permits. How do you prepare for that? You know, I prepare for it by doing this, but then Mike might say, well, hey, I do this, and wow, that's a great way. Now I feel like I'm going to be more valuable to the committee Because there are times, being new, you know, I'll just say a year, or a little bit more than a year on and off. I don't feel like I'm seasoned, and I really rely on listening to you to sometimes help formulate questions that I already, on things that I've looked at. It's like, oh, geez, I didn't catch that. Well, I'm not gonna catch everything. That's why there's 9 of us on this committee. So, to learn either from some of our more seasoned commissioners, or from Rodney, or from O'Brien was a commissioner for quite a long time. Tell me what's your process when you do a blank? What is it? What's the first thing you look at? You look at the ordinances, you look at the master plan, do you look at the site plan, do you know? I know I would gain a lot of valuable knowledge from somebody. Maybe we have a Saturday meeting from 8 to 9. You know, we don't have to drag this out. Just pick something simple, go over it, and then take what we can from it to make us better. But long story longer, sorry. I'll do that if you don't mind. Would that be okay? Or Phil, would you prefer to do that?
Well, I think as our representative from the Board of Trustees, I think you're an appropriate bridge. I'm certainly willing to talk to Brian, I'm willing to talk with Rodney, I'm willing to talk with Mark, whoever. I'm willing to talk with Bill. But I guess I would say as a first step, let them know that there's a concern from our end, and then maybe just tell them that we're open to receiving constructive feedback on how we're doing our jobs, and also just if they have any concerns, they should bring them to us. But just let them know that that we're open to constructive criticism, but we'd like that rather than what we got tonight.
Understood. Well, I think maybe, both of us can approach that then,
Yeah. When is the next board meeting?
next Wednesday.
A week from tomorrow?
So maybe I'm not as sensitive as some, but it makes you reflect on yourself and whether or not you're doing what you were asked to do when you took this job. And, I think we all have our different niche. We look to Alex for certain things, we look, everybody. I mean, we've relied on you numerous times for your expertise and for brought forth. I would say we are a public forum. It wasn't that it was in this forum, everything's public when we communicate, correct? So maybe it's how it was said, we're diverse people, come on. I am not a great speaker, so there's times when I fumble with my words and formulate my message. I've known Bill a long time, I'll give him a pass. But I think we ought to utilize, if it's coming from the board, comes through our representative. And to your point, I think, let's get specific on things we should do. I think the example of your packet's not even open. I'm just like everybody else, I'm cheating when I'm at work, I got this screen, and I'm looking through the packet on this screen because I can scroll back and forth. So I don't open this one up until I'm putting it together and making sure I can work through the meeting and have it all segregated. But, again, we're not all polished, all right? We've seen it from the president on down. But I think the message is let's reflect on what we're supposed to be doing for this board that we work for. But, again, I'm a short timer, so maybe it's easier for me to look at it that way. But I've been on planning commission a very long time. Maybe not the second time I came back, but the first time I was with the good old boy, that was before Phil came on. But,
Yeah.
it was Ken Schaefer And there was some trying meetings back then. It's inherently gonna happen. We're diverse, which is great. We're diverse. That's our benefit, right?
Well, and I think that's a great point, Commissioner Darren, because not everybody's gonna be in the same place. This isn't about groupthink. And if that's the expectation, count me out. Because that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to try to serve our community with the competencies that I have. I'm not in construction management, I'm not in real estate, that's not who I am. But that's okay. And if I didn't think I had a place here, one, I would have never signed up. And two, I would have never re-upped. And so I think we all bring uniqueness in terms of the talents that we bring to the commission, because if it's about compensation, it's a losing proposition, okay? Let's start there. It's about
You're a
service.
comedian.
Yes, it's about service is what it's about. And, I'm a firm believer that, service is the price you pay for the space you occupy. And we all have a duty to serve. And so, that's why I take exception to what was said, because I believe I'm here for all the right reasons. To get pointed at, because I had the first thing I shared with Tara, who I've never met before in person, was I never received my packet. I'm a note writer. I prefer to have that, but I didn't get it, so I had to download, as she instructed in her email. If you didn't get the packet, download it, bring it. We're not going to have internet access, and so you try to do the best you can. I didn't go home before I came here. It's at home, and this has been. It just keeps happening. I don't know why. I think maybe my mailman doesn't like me. I don't know, because my packet seems to always come the day of or the day after the commission meeting. So that's just, it is what it is. And and again, to have these conversations and fact finding before you blow up on people in the public, because this is a very public forum. This is going to be on the township's website. And at first, when it started, I thought this was a citizen expressing. I don't really know Bill. I know who he is. I don't really know him. Don't know his temperament. Don't know anything. I thought it was a citizen expressing some concerns about what was happening until we started talking about who we're going to vote for and who we're not going to vote for. That's what I take exception to. That's bullying. To have commissioners sitting here thinking that somehow they're going to be dismissed because somebody's upset with them or have a perspective, I don't think that's the right way to handle things. And I just need to say that so I can move on.
I'm sorry, I must have missed that message. I thought it was a reflection on our duties. I'm sorry. So that's what I was speaking to.
So I think the comment was right at the end, just that, I'm going to be very picky who I vote for. Now, I just don't know who any of it's directed at, and I think that would be something that.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I did hear that. I apologize. It's my replacement, right? He's going to reflect them on the duties that they're asking us to do in mine and Alex's replacement. That's how I took that.
We have it. My term and Buckley's term comes up in February, so there's really,
Well,
my understanding, there's 5 people have applied for 4 spots.
Oh, I didn't even know.
That's just what I've heard. I don't have any backing to that. Maybe the staff would know better than I would, so.
So good. They'll find that replacement.
Oh, yeah, you'll be covered.
Out.
You'll be covered. You'll be covered. Yeah.
But I mean, the issue, to me anyway, the issue is that there is apparently a perception in some quarters, and certainly Bill is one of those quarters based on what he said, that there is a problem with the planning commission in that and again, it's not clear who they're talking about, but that some subset of us, anywhere from 1 of us to 9 of us, are not preparing properly, because everybody, I'll be the first to admit, there are some times when I've spent less time on it than others. Your work, most of us are employed, and you have to juggle these things, and other things come up. So, I've been to some meetings where I've been better prepared, and other meetings where I've been slightly less well prepared. But the implication is that we're chronically underprepared, at least some people are. And that's what needs to be discussed, I think, in a more constructive sort of way. Because if that is true, then that's something that needs to be worked on. But if it's not true, then it's really a slam that's not deserved. And I tend to feel that even that perception, I think, is overdrawn, I think. And I think it's also been true over the years that we've had, as Stan pointed out, we've had a mix of people on the committee with different interests, different strengths. Different people have contributed differently. Some people love to pore over the site plans and find all the little details, and you can tell that other people that's less true, and so on. So, but I just, yeah, I don't think that the idea that we're, that there's, that we're not doing our jobs, I don't feel it's accurate.
Well, I mean, I think the supervisor that nominated each of us, depending on when we arrived here, they felt that we were gonna be a good complement to the people that were already part of this commission. And, part of that is, as both of you have said, diverse backgrounds. You don't want everybody on one topic. Well, that's just, you wouldn't do that. So you put together a team that would complement each other to have a background of this, and a background of that, and a background of this, to help be able to tackle everything that comes in front of us. So, I can lean on, Commissioner Shingles for something. I can lean on this. You guys can lean on me. We can all lean on each other for direction when we need it. And I think we're a good makeup of that. But apparently there's some folks that feel somebody's not prepared. I assume it's not an isolated incident. My guess is it would be something that's built up over time, that somebody feels somebody's not prepared. Is my assumption, it's strictly an assumption based on the information that we've gathered. But I think the only way to know and address that is to find out maybe who. That's an uncomfortable conversation to have. But who is it? And maybe there's a complete misunderstanding on just an observation of when somebody shows up here. I don't know, but maybe we can find a way to bridge that gap to get some answers.
I think Trustee Theron's approach
Yeah,
probably could.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll do my best to come up with something I think Phil had talked about.
If it's me, I've taken care of the problem. We're all set.
Well, me too. My term's up in February, so they don't have to renew me. So,
Mike, you're gonna be missed, for sure.
Just comedic relief.
Yeah.
Oh, I enjoy this too. This is.
Your term expires on the 15th of February, I believe. Are you coming to that meeting?
I will if they need me to.
Okay. So if they have,
If the board has somebody.
Your term doesn't end until the 15th, so you're here.
No.
The board says, go ahead, Mike.
Make an ice cream for me.
Yeah.
I move that
Put on
you
the
carry
deadline
on to the February
that's the date of the
15th
meeting.
That is the date of the meeting, so yeah, it goes through the 15th. Yeah.
I've got it on.
So the term is through that date. Yeah.
Any other final comments? Thank you all very much. We're completed our agenda. We're adjourned until February 15th.
And Mike? Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
About,
Yes.
So
can I
it's
sign
almost
the
done
minutes
here.
and I did.
Oh, yeah, give
it
that to the next one.
Okay, awesome. No, thank you.
I caught that when I was trying to write down,
I'm just
our roll
gonna
call.
sign back
Again,